Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frankie Stats Janisch. And their co-host, the man of controversy, Mr. Bryan the Duke Davids. And finally, your host, Aaron Turner. Let's get ready to Schmoedown.
What's going on, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? It is episode number 47 of the Schmoedown Rundown. My name is Aaron. I am your host as always. Joining me today, he is the stat man, Frank Janisch. What's up, man?
What's going on, Aaron, Bryan? I need a vacation. I know it's only the first round, but I could use a vacation at the end of these 2 weeks.
Also here is Brian Davids. What's up, man?
Aaron, when you say you went to WrestleMania, how do you say it?
WrestleMania?
No, tell me an example of a story of you going to WrestleMania or something at WrestleMania.
I went to WrestleMania. I saw The Miz. It was great.
You don't say the WrestleMania, right?
No, of course not.
Okay, just checking. Thanks.
All right, guys, before we jump into some recaps, we have a special guest that will join us towards the end of the show, the Godfather, Mr. Drew McWeeny, on the heels of Above the Line's big win against the Nerds Watch. We're going to talk to Drew all about it. He's going to give us some scoops on how he and Sam became a team. He's going to tell us what is next for Above the Line when they take on DC Movie News. But before we get there, we have to talk about some Schmoedown news. Brian, what do we got?
Well, for the last few weeks, I've been tracking each of the 3 celebrity Schmoedown matches that Harloff informed us were coming. I scooped and coined the movie trivia glowdown since Wicked City's Heather Grace Hancock, who's also a giant Zodiac fan, spoiled it on TV Talk. Well, this past Monday, one of my many Collider sources scooped the second celebrity Schmoedown of the 3, and it was none other than the Losers Club in the upcoming It movie. That includes Finn Wolfhard of Stranger Things fame, not to be confused with Dunkirk's Finn Whitehead. The young cast will be playing in a free-for-all format until the last loser wins. Turner, what was your reaction to the It free-for-all?
Well, I'm super excited for the film It. I cannot wait when it drops next week, and this is going to be a fun one. Free-for-all style rules means everybody gets a shot. I think that's cool. I don't know what the knowledge base is going to be, so the questions are going to be very interesting. But we're all just here to have a good time for this, so I'm in.
Frank?
Yeah, I'm with Aaron on here. I'm very excited to see the movie, even though it's not usually my cup of tea, but the hype has gotten to me, so I'm looking forward to the movie. And I'm looking forward to seeing what these kids bring to a Schmoedown free-for-all. Again, Aaron said, I don't know what the questions are going to be like, so that'll be interesting. But again, we're all here to have fun and be entertained.
Stephen King said it was good, so I might as well see it. That leads us to our third celebrity Schmoedown story, as Brett Davern and Bo Murchoff, formerly of MTV's Awkward, one of Josh McCouga's guiltiest pleasures, will be competing a week from Monday. They're promoting their new Crackle film, Party Boat, which also stars Jay Moore, among others. Team champion and tracking-board.com's Jeff Snyder will captain Bo's team, while Collider Mailbag's John Roca will steer Brett Davern's team. Guys, any reaction to this other celebrity Schmoedown?
Well, I like that they're adding the player element, just like they did in the glowdown with Clark and Miss Movies. Now you have Jeff and Roca as team captains, if you will. It kind of adds a different dynamic. I want to see how they gel. But once again, I mean, it should be entertaining nonetheless.
Yeah, I like that players are getting involved when it comes to lesser-known commodities like Bo and Brett in this case, but in the future, I hope they evaluate each celebrity accordingly, because it would be a shame for someone like the next Sam Witwer to come along and we're having our own people take food off of their table. So it's very important to make sure who has trivia knowledge and who doesn't, because it would be a shame to not let some real talented trivia people come in and really do some damage. But Frank, any thoughts on this other celebrity Schmoedown?
Yeah, I do like the fact that they're bringing in current Schmoedown competitors to do battle alongside whatever celebrities they get here, because I honestly don't know that much about these guys coming in. So to have guys like Snyder, Roca, people I'm familiar with, helps me to make sure I tune in, even though I was going to already. But I think for the general fan out there, if they don't know a particular celebrity, but they know Schmoedown competitors, it gives them more of an incentive to check it out, as opposed to, I don't know who they are, it doesn't really count for anything. But in this case, it's people you do know as well. So I think that's a good call, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the match goes.
Yeah, you just reminded me that it's not just to make up for any trivia lacking on the part of these celebrities. It's also to make up for some celebrities that people may not know. So I get why it's important. I'm just saying that the next Sam Witwer, whoever that is, I want to make sure that they get their full time in. And Brittany Young, she could have played a whole match by herself against someone like Clark or any other Schmoedown competitors. So just keep that in mind. And I just want to remind everyone how important it is to embrace these celebrity Schmoedowns, because they allow us to open the door to new viewers that wouldn't know about the show had their favorite MTV stars not competed. We all want to see Drew McWeeny wax some more fools. However, to do that, the Schmoedown as a business has to be able to grow as well as sustain itself. I don't care if the questions are easier or the competition isn't as heated, the product is still entertaining, and ultimately I will support any and all celebrity Schmoedowns because they keep the league's lights on whether you realize it or not.
All right, guys. Well, not only that, great news. A new schedule dropped. The commissioner gave us a big update with what looks to be the next couple of months of Schmoedown action. There's a couple things that stick out to me personally, but let me get your thoughts first, Frank. Anything stick out to you in the schedule?
As we know, the second round of the tournament, those matchups have been decided. So I am looking forward to the late to the party Wolves of Steel matchup the most. But outside of those, the one that caught my eye the most is this Andreyko-Rachel Cushing matchup in the singles tournament. I am completely fascinated by this matchup. I think they stack up pretty well together. The only difference being is that Rachel is very knowledgeable in inner geekdom, as we have seen, and Draco, probably not so much. We saw it in his match against Jay Washington. He got the category of Star Wars, went over in that. So I think it's pretty evenly matched between these two, aside from the geekdom categories, and even those are going to be a little more, I guess you could say, light questions as opposed to heavy, deep-cut geek questions. So I'm really looking forward to this match.
Well, I too had the Android and Rachel circled on my schedule. I think we got that scoop from Jeff or somebody previously, but I too had Rachel and Android circled on my schedule. I think we got the scoop from Snyder or someone about this match. I think we had heard about it somewhere, but really the big story from all this schedule talk is the fact that Hector Navarro pulled out of the 5-way wildcard match that currently features Burnett, Mance, Inman, and Dewberry. The final spot will be picked out of a 15-name lottery. And quite honestly, it's a shame that Matt Atchity, Whitney Seibold, and Jim Vavida aren't shoo-ins for this wildcard match already, but what can you do? At least they'll be in this 15-name lottery, or so we think. Arguments can also be made for Ben Bateman, Mark Bernardin, especially now that Bernardin is done with his Castle Rock commitment. I also wish they would call this qualifying match the singles wildcard or the singles 5-way wildcard, since it's essentially deciding the wildcard player in the tournament. In 2012, MLB decided to do a wildcard game where two wildcard teams in each league would play each other in a single game playoff after the end of the regular season. The winner of the game advances to play the first seeded team in the division series. So the Schmoedown is doing the same thing, but with 5 wildcard players. So why not call it the singles wildcard or singles 5-way wildcard? First off, guys, any reaction to the Navarro of it all in this 15-person lottery?
Hector seems like a guy that has quite the busy schedule these days, so it doesn't surprise me that he pulled out of this. And Hector is a big money player, so we'll see him at Spectacular, and that's all well and good. So, I mean, it sucks because I like seeing him around, but it's not too bad for me.
Yeah, I was just talking about this with Christian, and I had some hesitance about the fact that Navarro was appearing in more matches, and it just didn't seem like it would fully pan out just because we know he's so busy. And sure enough, he already had to cancel on a commitment. In fact, I'm surprised we were able to get him in the teams tournament. Yeah, they only played one match, but at least he's trying to show up more Frank, any thoughts on the 15-name lottery? Who would you like to see? Were you surprised by Navarro exiting?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I'm more bummed than surprised because I do like what Navarro brings to the league. I like his jovial spirit, and he's always joking around, and I like what he did with Schnepp in his previous match there. So I was a little bummed to see him go. As for who's going to fill that spot, I think for someone who talks a lot, I think I would like to see Jay Washington fill that spot and see what kind of noise, if any noise he can make in that wild card.
Are you trying to squash your beef?
No. I'm just furthering the beef because I think he'll probably get trounced in the wild card. I just want to see that for myself.
So you want to see him embarrassed? I see that. Well, like many, I can't wait to see the vibe of the Malton Falcons versus Cinema Sins. That's on the schedule as well, and it's basically old school Hollywood versus not in Hollywood, as I've said before. This match was taped around the same time that Jordan Vogt Roberts and Rian Johnson, among other directors, launched a missile attack on CinemaSin. So I'm curious if Leonard will take shots at them as well. I doubt it, but I'm still curious. I'm also curious if the Malton Falcons will be regular players or not. I don't expect league play, but perhaps 2 to 3 times per year just for special occasions. I don't know, but if they win, winning decides everything, as we know. But for some reason, I didn't quite realize that Harloff versus Merle would be so soon. It's on September 15th. So I'm glad that we'll have Christian solely focused on Spectacular in just 2 weeks' time, something he wants to do more than anything. I'm glad we won't have to kick him around any longer because Merle's going to win this match. But I'm glad that's coming up. I thought for some reason it might be October, November, but I'm also perturbed by this idea that Mocha gets an easy path to the final of the singles tourney as well. We know that he just got an easier path for teams. And lastly, I'm looking forward to Snyder punishing Nost in round 1. I'm also looking forward to McWeeny and JTE and Levine and Bibiani, 4 of my favorites right there.
You said it there, Brian. McWeeny, JTE is another one that popped out to me. The two personalities between them, so very much different how they approach the game. JTE a little more boisterous and in your face. Drew McWeeny, as a singles competitor, just walks in there, answers the questions, complete opposite of what JT attracts in the Schmoedown.
Guys, we're missing one thing here. You guys gave some great picks there. You're missing one huge thing that's missing from this entire schedule. That's 2 words: Tom Dagnino. Tom Dagnino is nowhere on the schedule. What is going on?
He's very upset about this. He took to Twitter or Facebook, and he's very upset. What's going on here, guys?
As he should be.
I'm very content that he's not on the list. He's not on the schedule.
Wait a second.
He sucks.
Wait a minute.
Look, I value the survival of the Schmoedown, and so I value ratings. And Finstock, a.k.a. Dagnino, brings ratings. So, Frank, I guess you want the Schmoedown to fold.
I don't think you need Dagnino playing in matches to get your ratings. Him popping up in post-match or during the match itself can bring you some ratings. I just don't need his lack of quality of play to interfere with the quality of play we're getting currently from all the players in the Schmoedown.
Look, if you can trot Matt Nost out there, you can certainly trot Tom Dagnino out there. At least Dagnino is going to get you ratings. Now, some of you might be thinking, why did they just play the Where in the World is Booker T segment music when there were no Booker T segments this week? However, in light of Hurricane Harvey, it's important to answer the question that this segment asks because Booker T. Huffman and his family are safe in Houston, Texas, as Booker is leading the charge when it comes to Hurricane Harvey relief efforts. Booker dropped everything, including a WWE Raw event in Memphis, in order to help his community through a Category 4 storm that devastated cities along the Gulf Coast with record-breaking rainfall, leaving many regions completely flooded. For Houston residents affected by Hurricane Harvey, Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner has established a Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund through the Greater Houston Community Foundation. To donate, go to ghcf.org/hurricane-relief, We'll include the link in our show notes.
All right, guys, we're going to slide into our first recap here this week. It is Blofeld's Cat making their team debut versus a new team heroes, Jon Schnepp and Hector Navarro. Now, in the promos, we had Robert Meyer Burnett doing his usual craziness. Of course, we had the whole Lions in there. Tom Dagnino, Grace was there. We were missing the Team Patriots, but for the most part, everybody was there. Apparently, we found something out about Schnepp that we did not know, that apparently he shakes down children at comic book stores. That was an interesting tidbit. And Grace Hancock does not know which way the loser sign goes. But I digress. What did you guys think of these promos here?
Well, I love the fact that Schnepp and Navarro look like the Wet Bandits, given the height differential between Hector and Schnepp. It's just so funny to see those two side by side. And when it came to the Dens promo, there's been a lot of comments about how Dagnino's always trying to get in the shot, and they're always concerned about the shot. Well, in this one, he purposely hid himself behind R&B or behind Andraco. So clearly he's toying with the audience, and I love seeing that stuff. But par for the course as far as promos go. But it was nice to see Blofeld's Cat. It was nice to see Andraco. He hasn't played in 4 years, it feels like. We haven't seen Schnepp in 5 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the first time Navarro has played in a non-Inner Geekdom sanctioned match?
This year, he...
Oh, that's right. He played in the old school Schmoedown.
Yeah.
My bad.
With Adam Havlick.
Frank, what did you think of these promos?
Yeah, it was pretty run-of-the-mill. I just can't get over Schnepp and Hector's height differential. It cracks me up. Just Schnepp is like a whole version of Hector taller than Hector. It's really, really funny. And Bryan brought up the fact Tom Dagnino standing there in the background, just grinning ear to ear while Robert Meyer Burnett does his thing, and then Draco does his thing for once on the mic. He's kind of in the spotlight now. And I like hearing Draco speak, and Robert Meyer Burnett was kind of a calmer version of himself that we've seen, but then he ramped it up at the end. So all in all, it was just a decent run-of-the-mill promo for me.
I said this to you guys in the DMs. I'm not saying Schnepp looks like Chewie, but the way that the height differential makes the two of them look, Schnepp kind of looks like Chewie in that sort of arrangement.
Must be the nod, because he does do the Chewbacca head nod as well. Exactly. So, I don't know.
I'm not saying he looks like Chewie, but the way that he stands next to a shorter subject just gives off that effect.
There's a scene in A New Hope when Han Solo leans into Chewie. He's like, "Where did you dig up that old fossil?" I just kind of envisioned Hector leaning on Schnepp in that same way.
Exactly. And then Schnepp hands Hector a coat.
I'm glad that you brought up Tom Dagnino going behind the shot, because he does something in the post-match later that's worth noting as well, but we'll talk about that here in a second.
Was he trying to make our Twitter header cover photo?
I don't think he was trying on purpose, but that came out to be one heck of a photo, so good job there.
You're welcome. Now, before the gameplay got underway, there was a big lesson from Robert Meyer Burnett about the pronunciation of Blofeld's Cat. People have been saying Blofeld, including Mark and Christian, as well as Frank. So it was nice that everyone got a pronunciation lesson. However, Christian proceeded to mispronounce it the rest of the match. So it wasn't very effective.
I honestly couldn't tell the difference. I didn't understand what was going on there. So
shame on you, Frank.
Well, let's talk about Blofeld's Cat in round one. They got 14 points, and Draco and Burnett both getting 7. On the Team Heroes side, Schnepp 3, Navarro 5 for a total of 8 points. Before we get into a little bit of breakdown talk, I got to talk about question 5, because it was another Mark and Draco moment, as the question was about Dune and Sting's character in Dune, not Steve Borden Sting, the singer Sting. What in the world? I don't think I've ever in the history of the Schmoedown heard someone cut off the question and then repeat the question that wasn't Mark or Christian that were reading the question, if that makes any sense. I thought that was an incredibly fun moment.
Yeah, Android knows his stuff. I can't believe I just said that, but Christian had some trouble pronouncing a character in Dune, and Android was all about it. He knew the subject right away, came in for the assist, and it's a memorable moment. This is why Android should be playing more matches.
And not only did he say the question, he said it pretty much verbatim of what it was. So not only good recall memory there, good knowledge on the film as well. What about you, Frank?
This, for me, is the...
For me.
Yes. for me is the moment of the first round at the very least. And one of the top moments of this season, I was dying laughing at the fact that Dracula was pretty much taking over hosting duties, if not for just a few seconds. I found it incredibly entertaining, Aaron, and it's going to be one of my... He has another great moment this year, along with his incredible demolition of his other 4 competitors in the free-for-all. So he's stacking up these memorable moments right now.
I think Frank Janisch is joining the den, Aaron. It sounds like he's shifting his allegiance.
No. That's not what this means. You just don't misconstrue it.
Well, Blofeld's Cat, they missed only 1 question each. This was quite a debut round for Burnett and Android's partnership, their new partnership. And I've been waiting for more Android since May. That was at a time when everybody still thought free-for-all was indicative of singles and team success. But overall, I think these were some easier round 1 questions than we've seen so far in the tournament. And even though I haven't seen Hollow Man, I still knew Kevin Bacon was in it. However, Heroes, Hector in particular, showed vulnerability in his non-IGD game, something the Basic Instinct Ice Pick proved, as well as Wall Street and Dune. So he might be the greatest IGD player, but in standard format, he's human after all. But Schnepp, he's still wildly inconsistent, even in his supposed strengths, since his recall rate is problematic. So the round went as I expected.
Yeah, this round went just about as I expected as well. I thought Hector, he had a very average match along with the rest of the league. This is how it normally goes. 5-6 points is just about the average for all these players in the league this year. So he was on par with that. He dropped a couple that I think he could have got. It turns out Robert Meyer Burnett had a pretty good shot at getting all 8 right if he could have only gotten that first question right, the Sherlock Holmes question, because he got that Wall Street question correct where everyone else got it wrong. I thought Robert Meyer Burnett had a great first round, a little better than I thought he would do. Great debut, Blofield's Cat.
I want to talk about something here, talking about the Sherlock Holmes question. The crosstalk between, I believe it was Christian and Mark. Mark was talking about different versions of Sherlock Holmes, like on the BBC with Benedict Cumberbatch or Elementary with Johnny Lee Miller. These are things that I don't like. There's a competitor out there that's playing the game that is thinking about Sherlock Holmes and they mistakenly think of the TV show instead of the movie. That's on them. Don't help them. I thought that was a help. I didn't like that.
There's another example of this in the second match that we'll cover coming up. But yeah, I definitely agree with you.
I understand what you're saying there. And I also would like to think that just because we can hear it, doesn't necessarily mean the competitors can hear it, but I understand your concern, Aaron. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are hearing it because they're thinking about what they're trying to think about. They're not necessarily paying attention to the crosstalk over there. I mean, I guess it would behoove some players now in the future to kind of pay attention to what they might be saying because they could be dropping hints. But I think for the most part, I think, if any, very few probably hear what's going on at that desk. And I think in some of these matches, I've noticed that their crosstalk levels, the volume levels they've been kind of whispering back and forth in some instances. So I'm not sure if the table can clearly hear them of what they're saying.
There's an important distinction to make here. The players can hear the announcers. Whether they choose to listen is a whole different story, though. But there's an example in the second match that we'll cover tonight that proves that they can hear even the faintest of whispers.
Well, let's talk about round 2 now. Blofeld's Cat up first. They got classics, 5 of 6 for 8 points. Heroes did come away with a 1-point steal. That was, what do we think of round 2 here, Blofeld's Cat?
Well, Android has shown a prowess for the classics category on other shows. So it was interesting to see how this would play out, especially since R&B seemed more partial to action adventure. So that was an interesting dynamic there. Because, again, they're a new team, so they're kind of figuring each other out as teammates. So always pay attention to those little moments, especially in wheel rounds where they're deciding categories. But as we've talked about before, the elder statesmen of this league often like to make statements to the rest of the league by going with categories that most players wouldn't choose. And while the choice to respin from action adventure is something very few would do, Android and Burnett, especially Android, threw down the thunder in classics when you consider the rest of the league's competence in the category. They even showed strong deduction skills when they didn't know a particular answer. So all things considered, it's an impressive debut wheel round for Blofeld's cat, earning 8 out of a potential 12 points.
I thought the debut round from Blofeld's cat was really good. I thought Andreyko did exactly what I thought he would do in a classics category. I've actually, been there for a couple matches, and Andreyko's been in the audience, and I've heard him answer countless questions, and I wasn't surprised that he has a very vast knowledge that I don't think has come across in his few matches that he has. And Robert Meyer Burnett, he's very involved in film, and he came up with some great questions, or rather answers. The Spartacus answer with Stanley Kubrick. So I'm not surprised that they did. I like the way they played it, and you can tell that they had a plan.
That was a bit of a Freudian slip, since he did come up with a great question in round 1 when he corrected Christian.
All right, well, let's talk about Heroes' turn in the second round. They got comic book movies. Surprise, surprise. Seems to just happen for these guys out of nowhere. 6 of 6, all of them, for 12 points. At this point in the match, Blofeld's cat still has the lead, 22-21. But Heroes is right on their tail. Brian, what'd you think?
Well, whether he realized it or not, Hector used BDSM by moving the ticker 1 tick without moving the ticker to the category they sought most, comic books. So by treating the wheel in this fashion and not as a genie lamp, the reward of comic book movies was bestowed upon them. And it was an unreal round. 13-point round for Heroes, including a perfect 6 for 6 via their wheel spin, as well as that Frank Morgan steal. And it was all thanks to BDSM, folks. So, wow, what a match. And Hector went on to say later that he knew one thing. If they got the right category in this round, it would be a match. He wasn't sure about rounds 1 and 3, but as long as this round went their way, he knew they'd be in it, and were they. So I'm glad that as Schmoedown fans, we got to see a more competitive round, and I'm glad BDSM had a hand in that.
Frank, it seems like no matter what with Team Heroes, we just keep turning on the same channel. It just seems like comic book movies every single time. What'd you think here, man?
I simply could not believe they got it for, I believe, the 4th time out of the 5 matches they've been in, or spins rather, or whatever the case may be. You almost have to think at this point the wheel must be rigged in their favor, but of course it's not. It was just a great spin, and Hector spun it because it felt fun, I guess is the reason here. And so Hector was right that if they got this category, they needed to run the table, which they did, and they got themselves within 1 point, put some serious pressure on Andreyko and Robert Meyer Burnett. So it was really fun to see them go at it, and you saw why Hector is the champion for a reason in the Inner Geekdom series, and Schnepp was able to have some sort of quality impact for his team in this match. I thought it was a great round between Hector and Schnepp as teammates, because this is their first match, and I thought they worked things out between themselves pretty well for the most part. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing how Heroes progresses outside of this match.
It's funny, in our bracketology episode, I joked that there was no way Team Action would continue the Heroes journey by landing Action Adventure again in their round 1 match. And yet Heroes 2.0 did in fact continue the Heroes journey by getting comic book movies again. So I was in the ballpark, just had my teams mixed up.
I can't believe the luck. When Clark had her bats with the wheel, it seems like the exact opposite. Like every time it turns into Heroes' favor. I kind of wonder in my head, like, what would their scores be like if they didn't have that? But that's kind of not fair because that's what they spun. But some of these questions were not easy either, and they nailed every single one of them. Very impressed by both of these guys. When Schnepp, he'll be the first to tell you, man, he doesn't have good recall. Trivia is not his game. But when he gets something that he knows very well, the guy crushes it. And Hector was right there with him. It was a great team effort. I really enjoyed it. And before we get to round 3, I got to say something about Hector picking numbers, Hector and Schnepp. I love that bit where Hector just kept picking a higher number. It only goes to 20. We'll take 25. I love that whole bit. Maybe for some people they didn't care for it, but I thought that was a pretty fun bit.
It was a nice save when they went over, outside the number range, and then they just continued with it and rolled with it. And I completely agree. And I thought it was a great bit that they ended up pulling off.
We had Team Heroes up first. Hector Navarro getting the first 2 points right off the bat with Snow White, and Heroes took a brief 23-22 lead.
I've noticed a trend lately, especially in round 3. We've heard more Josh McCouga rule requests followed by correct answers. And it's always a more dramatic moment when such scenarios happen. But lately, when the Josh McCougar rule has been requested, a lot of time will pass. And sometimes you'll think, oh, they're just going to get it wrong. They're buying time. But lately, we've seen more correct answers coming out of that delay. So this was another example, this great Snow White poll. So it's a very good moment to start off round 3 for Team Heroes.
We had to go back to Blofeld's cat after that. Robert Meyer Burnett did miss the 2-pointer, which was Jack Black played R.L. Stine in Goosebumps.
First off, Burnett was not thrilled about having to take the family film 2-pointer, and it showed since he missed an easy 2-pointer, something that he's got to know. However, Aaron, you can sound the Brian Davids rant alarm right now. This Goosebumps question is a perfect example of this fallacy that's been going around Schmoedownville of late. The fallacy that questions are always considered easy if you've seen the corresponding movie, and I couldn't disagree more with this particular fallacy. I haven't seen Goosebumps, but as someone who pays attention to the industry, including entertainment news sites, podcasts, and YouTube shows, as well as basic studio marketing campaigns, I'll pick up enough information about films I had no intention of seeing, such as Goosebumps. I never saw Valerian, but I can name a few surface-level details from simply looking at what's put in front of me on a daily basis. So Goosebumps and Jack Black, that's an easy question and answer that everyone should know had they paid the slightest bit of attention to their Twitter feed the last 2 years, or watch one trailer that was shown before a film that you actually wanted to see. This isn't a deep cut from the 80s starring Commander Adama. That being said, I might know that Christian Bale played Trevor Resnick in The Machinist and that he lost 63 pounds to do so. However, I would acknowledge that questions about either of those details would be considered difficult had they come up as questions. And whenever a challenging question pops up that I happen to know, I often acknowledge their degree of difficulty when it comes to everybody else. Also, we've been watching the Schmoedown long enough now to know what is considered an easy, average, or difficult question. Lily James, Jack Black, and Kristen Bell are answers to easy questions, regardless if you've seen the movie they're associated with, because they're relative to other Schmoedown questions we've seen and heard to this point. In other words, we know where it falls on the difficulty meter. Like I said, we pick up information about films through pop culture, including the internet, social media. DC Movie News hasn't seen Treasure of the Sierra Madre lately, if ever. We don't need no stinking badges. It's just that popular of a quote or misquote, as is the 3 Seashells, since it's a popular meme and GIF. Once again, questions can be easy, whether you've seen the corresponding movie or not, which is why my mom knows who Luke Skywalker's father is. Ultimately, Schmoedown's success is not about who's watched the most movies and remembers the most things. Movie watching is certainly a factor, but having an awareness of the industry, including news and box office, a quick recall rate, as well as an ability to deduce, is just as important. Plenty of players and teams are succeeding without seeing every film in question.
Let's go to Mark Andreyko on this one. He missed the 3-point question. Emma Stone's character was Wichita in Zombieland, not to be confused with Woody Harrelson's Tallahassee. Then we had Blofeld's cat had to get their 5-pointer, and Andreyko, wouldn't you know it, came up with this one. Starman, directed, of course, by John Carpenter. So we had to go back to Team Heroes. Schnepp missed the 3-pointer on both Steve Prefontaine actors, and this point was irrelevant to the final outcome. It was irrelevant either way, yet Schnepp used a repeat for a question that he did know the answer to and wasn't going to pull anyway, you could tell. I found that weird. I don't know if he just had a temporary lapse in judgment. I don't know. Frank, what did you think? Or did you catch that?
Oh, if you listened to last week, you know bad strategy really, really bothers me. So, yeah, this absolutely bothered me. I had no idea why you would waste a repeat on a question you had no chance of answering. So it did bother me in that sense. But again, if you listen to what Schnepp said in his post-match, he plays for fun, so he doesn't take it super seriously like a majority of the players, if not the rest of the players in this league do, as well as the fans. I see why he would, but God, I hated hearing him do that.
It was kind of painful. What do you think, Brian?
Well, he's not the first person to do this, and obviously he was hoping that he could potentially think of an answer, perhaps the answer, but a couple teams, if not players, have done this as well. And when this rule was first announced, Aaron, I was talking with you on our former show that I imagine a scenario where someone like JTE, who is upset that they're about to lose, would just start using their repeat requests to annoy everybody because they are upset about losing. And so we see it to varying degrees, not necessarily as a way to annoy everybody, but we do see this pulled every now and again. And additionally, Schnepp mispronounced both of the actors in this case. Jared Leto, as he often says, and it was mispronounced as Billy Crudup when it's Crudup. So I have to point that out since those names are often mispronounced in this space. But yeah, sports question for Schnepp's three-pointer. Obviously, they had to rely on their 5, which makes the repeat request even more pointless.
Yeah, and I got to put on my Brian Davids hat here for a second. Attention competitors. Watch sports movies. Let's talk about the end. Speaking of sports, let's talk about the end-all be-all here. The 5-point question. Who directed Shakespeare in Love? Team Heroes could not pull it. It was John Madden was the director. Not that John Madden. That other John Madden. And Blofeld's Cat defeats Team Heroes 27-23. Robert Meyer Burnett gets his revenge. His villainy continues. And Mark Andreyko picks up a solid win. What did you think here overall, Brian?
Every time I hear the director John Madden, I always think of the director Steve McQueen, since they're both sharing names with more famous celebrities. But in this case, what a match. On paper, this match could have easily been a blowout for Blofeld's Cat, given the Schnepp zone of it all. But thanks to BDSM rewarding Heroes with another dose of comic book films, we were rewarded with an entertaining match. And the final round is really where Heroes' comic book dependence killed them. Ultimately, it came down to 5-pointers, and Blofeld caught there something Heroes failed to do.
Yeah, great match. Only because Heroes got comic book movies. I think that's the main reason why this was so close. Blofeld's Cat had one of the top winning percentages thus far in the first round. So it's a great debut just all around as a new team in the tournament. Going up against, Robert Meyer Burnett going up against a former teammate and as well as a rival in the Inner Geekdom series. So I had a lot of things going on in this match, and it really came down to general movie knowledge that superseded Heroes' knowledge base, and in the end, that's what did it. And Mark Andreyko, I think, just reaffirmed, I think maybe not only myself, but others out there, that he is as dangerous as anyone else in this league. You just wouldn't know it from that Jay Washington match that he had a while ago, which was just god-awful. I mean, he has some of his own weaknesses for sure, but I think they're very few and far between in relation to many other players in the league. So Robert Meyer Burnett has a real good teammate right next to him, and they can make some noise here in this tournament. It's going to be very interesting going forward.
Yeah, Andreyko's underrated. He's underutilized, and we haven't seen him since the John Humphrey match when everybody thought that free-for-all success would translate to singles and teams, and that match wasn't that impressive either, but clearly this guy is a factor when you give him opportunities, and I love that the team enterprise of it all with Burnett. Burnett's been a guy that's needed a change for a while in regard to Schnepp and team, so this is looking like the next big thing, regardless if they have tournament success or not.
And how quickly we kind of maybe forgot that match that he had with the Beast, that all-timer that was just one of the greatest matches there's ever been. Forget that Mark Andreyko was the other guy in that could have very easily won.
Add that match to his free-for-all magic, and he's part of 2 of the most significant Schmoedown highlights there are.
Made this comment in the YouTube comments of the videos, like, how many great moments has Mark Andreyko been a part of? Like, think of that match, the XX5XX, as I like to call it.
The Collision mic drop?
Exactly. The part from Collision. Now the repeat of the question in this round. Mark Andreyko, for a guy that's kind of understated, kind of in the background, kind of picks his shots, he picks some damn good shots. And he's a bigger part of this league than I think people realize.
I would love to pick his brain about all this stuff in general.
Let's talk about the post-match interview where it was conducted once again by Grace Hancock and the Lion's Den. This is what I wanted to point out about Tom. You'll notice that you guys talked about in the first part of the interview that Tom was in the background. Well, he was kind of in the foreground on this one as he talked first with Grace. However, he slid the microphone to Andreyko and started pushing him into the shot and moved himself into the background. So Tom knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that he needs to get his players in the forefront because we want to hear what they have to say. Of course, we love hearing Tom as well, or at least I do. And, you know, he made it about them and not about him, and that's what a good manager does.
Exactly right. This is leadership. This is good management. So Tom is willing to take a backseat. He knows when to put his ego aside. And the Den already started going after their next round opponent, Top 10. And they made a comment about Top 10 being on Harloff's payroll, according to Dagnino. Granted, this was taped a few weeks ago. It's now partially true, if you think about it. And Robert Meyer Burnett actually took some shots at Rocha's social justice column. So there are a lot of shots being fired. And to follow that up, Android remarked that Rocha thinks he's a rhinestone cowboy when he's a dime store cowboy. So great mic work from Android, as we've been saying.
Frank, what did you think of this post-match interview?
I thought for the most part it was a pretty calm Lions Den post-match interview when you compare it to everything else they've done in the past. But you guys have said it, you know, when Andreyko wants to throw some jabs, he can throw some haymakers in there as well. You know, they had social justice warrior article stuff I thought was incredibly damaging, or I don't know if that's the right word, but it was incredibly entertaining to hear him throw that out there. I like the kind of these two versions that we got.
Well, they still gave Burnett the chance to do his thing where he screamed at Navarro. So for the most part, though, it was calm. And it was a nice change of pace because Snyder and JTE were not there. So it gave the other members of the Den a chance to speak. And I like that Dagnino made sure they had ample time to do just that. But when it comes to hashtag Jen at the wall, hopefully soon to be Jen at the table, Schnepp was already annoyed about the multiple answer questions that they seem to keep getting, at least every time he plays, which is once every 6 months. And then the Heroes Team 2.0, they kept ignoring Burnett's contributions. They only acted like Android was the one who pulled off this win. So more disrespect being fired from both sides. Frank, were you surprised when Christian said that he's not quite done with Heroes 2.0 yet?
A little bit, because I don't know what this... I mean, we never got kind of a resolution in terms of what happens with Hector and Adam. They left Superhero News, and they're going to come up with another name. This was a while ago, but now Hector has been picked up for Hero. So, yeah, it makes me wonder what's going on with Adam Havlik and Hector, and now maybe they are all going to do this trimunitive thing with Heroes. I don't know. So it could be interesting in the future.
The thing is, I thought Christian was just going for the Schnepp Burnett of it all, and then he would put Heroes 2.0 back on the sideline. That could still happen. So it surprised me when he said that he's not quite done with Heroes 2.0. I guess there's more Schnepp and Burnett rivalry to be mined. Time will tell.
All right, guys. Our next recap is Top 10. John Rocha and Matt Nost versus the Real Rejects, John Humphrey and Greg Alba. I got to say, guys, Real Rejects, heavy underdogs in this match. And I hate that for them because these are good dudes that just want to have a good time. They've shown flashes here or there of being a good team. Sometimes they've come down to the last question, sometimes not, but they're always in for a good time. Top 10 in their little promo here. I'm not feeling it, guys. I'm still a little bored. I know, Frank, you may have a different opinion than me, but that's just how I feel. And they're still doing the 4 horsemen bit when there's only 2 people. I don't know how that works. But Frank, tell me what you thought of these opening promos here.
Yeah, I really love watching Greg and John play. I really love watching them in the Schmoedown. It's unfortunate that they got a tough matchup like Top 10. You mentioned Top 10 doing this 4 horsemen thing, and it seemed like Roca was trying to do that, but then Nos was like, yeah, we got to win 4 matches. How do you like that? So I don't think it quite played out the way Roca thought it would play. At least that's how I saw it. But I also love Real Rejects saying, they're going to go from 16 to 15 in this match.
I did like that as well. Brian, what did you think of this opening promos here?
Well, the Real Rejects are playing with house money. They know they shouldn't be there, so they're just going to have fun while they are there because they know they shouldn't be there. We know that MODOK and IGN should be there instead. Team Clammy Hands and MODOK should be there instead. But in these kind of matches, I love when the commissioner has to turn various negatives into positives, such as Real Rejects' record and how they were in most matches. And that even includes that famous Wolves of Steel match where they picked the category of Wolves of Steel's preference, even though they spun opponent's choice. So they take all these moments into account and they just try to hype the match in any way they can. But it was interesting because there was no RB3 in sight. And this is supposed to be a Young Bucks stable match. So again, I'm not sure the Young Bucks ever existed, to be honest. And there's more on that to come. But Harloff is still trying to push this idea that Top 10 is a face team at this point. They are insisting that Roca and Nos are face in terms of their status, and I'm not buying it for a number of reasons that we'll get into later. But on a separate note, Ryan Wright, Greg Alba, apparently he went on the Matt Atchity diet since we last saw him because he's lost a bunch of weight. He's looking good. He even did a fancy karate chop or karate kick to lead off their entrance. But the Rejects have had plenty of great smack, and this match was no different. They talked about Roca Reigns as blanking in previous matches, such as at Collision. They fired a bunch of shots at critically acclaimed as well. Roca Reigns did as well. But Aaron, yeah, you said that they're still trying to keep this 4 horsemen thing going, even though the 4 horsemen are beyond dead. They're well past dead. They held up the 4 fingers because they have to win 4 matches. I would argue they only have to win 3 matches. But the Real Rejects came out to Linkin Park, and I thought this was a strange choice because it was awfully sad. It kind of changed the tone of the match upon hearing that music. And I get it was kind of a tribute, but given the type of match that it was, given the kind of opponents that the Real Rejects are, I just felt that it was a tonal misstep. It was a misstep. It just didn't seem right for this environment. I like that they paid tribute, but it just didn't fit. Aaron, did you have an issue with them paying tribute to Linkin Park in this kind of environment?
No, I didn't have a problem with it. The song choice in the end, it doesn't even matter, kind of is like a double rib. I thought that was kind of interesting and dare I say fun, given the circumstances. But I'm still impressed, and you mentioned it earlier, that Greg Alba pulled out a roundhouse kick to break a board. I thought that was incredibly impressive. And good job, Greg, because you can easily probably pull an ACL, maybe tear an ACL there. So good job. I appreciated the commitment. That was really cool.
Clearly he practiced that for weeks, as he said, but I didn't catch the name of the song title, or nor do I remember the name of the song title, so perhaps that would add some meaning. But given how they were talking all this smack and cracking jokes in their promo, it just was a weird thing to shift to in their actual entrance. But I've joked before that the Outlaw, or Roca, basically came up with the character of the Outlaw by pulling together every spare Halloween costume that was left over in his closet, when you've got the Guy Fawkes mask and the cowboy hat and whatever else he wears. And then he sported a gold mask in this match, which we've never seen before. He put it on briefly and we never saw it again the rest of the match. Then he had these Bose noise canceling headphones that he had around his neck. So it looks like he's trying to rebrand himself a little bit, something I suggested 9 months ago, but it seems like the Bose noise canceling headphones were supposed to be the new version of the blindfold, because the blindfold no longer works when you've got whiteboards in the equation. So in this case, I think he was going to use it and introduce it as the new blindfold. However, you don't need such gimmicks against the Real Rejects. You just need to play.
Just real quick, that song in the end, because I am a big Linkin Park fan, so I knew the song right away, the song title, and I thought it was more or less playing to the fact that, yeah, they're playing top 10, and in the end, it doesn't really matter if they lose this match. I saw it more that way, straight ahead. Given when this match may or may have not been taped, I guess you could say it was a tribute as well to Chester from Linkin Park.
It was definitely around the same time that he passed away, but it could also be a way of Real Rejects saying this is their last match together. I'm sure Christian talked to them before this match took place that this will probably be their last match before being reassigned or reshuffled, as he put it in the post-match.
Let's talk about round one, where it was top 10 getting 12 points, Roca and Nost both getting 6 points each. The Real Rejects getting 9, hanging in there. Greg with 4, John with 5. Frank, what do you think of round one here?
I thought this was a great first round for top 10 for Roca and Nost, each getting 6 correct. I thought it was exactly what they needed to do right out of the gate here to start this tournament. And props to Greg and John for hanging around, hanging tough in this first round. John, he went on a little bit of a run there in the middle of that early part of the first round into the later half of the first round. And Greg was kind of all over the place in certain spots, couldn't quite pull out answers. So it kind of went the way I expected, but I was just glad to see top 10 come out firing on all cylinders here because they really, really needed that to set the tone.
Well, I have to correct Frank because Nost only got 5 questions right in round one. The question 3, the Monty Python question, Matt Nost did not write the correct answer despite saying the correct answer. Greg, on the previous question 2, wrote the correct answer, but he said it wrong. So a lot of that tricky stuff going on. That's why Rule Summit is so important. But question 1, Matt Nost got the answer correct. He was the only one to get the answer correct, Yogi Bear. And right away, Christian was planting this narrative of how well Nost is playing of late. More on that in a second, because the next question, an easy question involving the titular Sarah Marshall, and forgetting Sarah Marshall was played by Kristen Bell. And Matt Nost did not know it. So as soon as they try to establish this storyline that he's playing well, he misses an easy question. This is kind of Nost in a nutshell, if you ask me. But back to a previous point, Ryan Wright, Greg Alba mispronounced Kristen. He said Kirsten. He spelled it as Kristen, though, but he kept saying it as Kirsten. And I truly think he believed that is how you pronounce Kristen with the spelling of Kristen. I think he just combined the K and the R and thought it was normal. I don't know if he really knew there was a distinction, but again, of course, there's inconsistency when it comes to previous matches. And I keep saying it, we've got to figure out how we handle these things when it comes to subtle mispronunciations, subtle misspellings, people going first, people going after. I just got to have some consistency because right now it just seems like they're flying by the seat of their pants. But as far as that goes, question 6, Nost again wrote the wrong answer. He wrote Sally Fields, plural, it's only singular. Perhaps the pizza guy thought she was the cookie lady at the other end of the mall. Well, question 7, this was a significant moment as well. How many Death Wish films are there? There are 5. And Fredo Knapsack started to give away the answer by saying that he's seen 3 of them. And right away, Humphrey and Mocha both wrote down 3 before Mocha changed his answer to 4 at the very last second. So I feel like Ken clued them in this case, which is why they can absolutely hear what the commentators are saying. And the thing is, though, Fredo whispered 3. He whispered this very quietly on our end, at least, and they still wrote down 3. So the announcers can definitely tip off players, and it's very dangerous to say too much, like you said earlier, Aaron, in regards to TV versions of Sherlock and whatnot. So all in all, a solid round for top 10, and not a bad round, all things considered, for Real Rejects. Humphrey getting 5, Alba getting 4.
Yeah, I want to go back to question 8, actually. I love this question. I love this type of question. It was, what famous actor played a vampire in 94, the Grim Reaper in 98, and a Greek hero in 04, which was Brad Pitt, of course. But I love these type of questions. It's like the who has been killed by an alien, a Terminator, and a Predator. I love those questions because that's such deep cut knowledge. It's not something you're going to pull right away. That's a thinking answer. This is a complete side note, like I'm off base on this, but I just really love those type of questions.
I got to disagree with you, man, because they can't see this question on a screen. They have to think about all 3 layers of this question.
Makes it even better.
And it's good for us. It's fun for us because we can see it and organize it in our head. But when you're playing and it's a pressure situation, I can see how they would be so annoyed to have to answer essentially what is 3 questions in one.
We'll just have to agree to disagree there. But hey, Matt Nost did get it.
Well, this is another example of, well, we hate multiple answer questions, but this is essentially a multiple question. It's multiple questions that leads to one answer. So it's kind of the opposite of multiple answer questions, as there are multiple questions in one question.
I thought it was super fun, and I had even more fun that John answered Bill Paxton. I thought that was super fun. He's I don't know what Greek hero Bill Paxton would have ever played, but I thought that was a fun response. Let's get into round 2, where it was the Real Rejects going first, and they got famous actors and actresses. They go 4 of 6 for 6 points. Top 10 did get a 1-point steal, stealing the Douglas family. Brian, what do you think of Real Rejects round 2 turn here?
Well, the strange thing is Top 10 deferred to Real Rejects, and obviously this is a strategy that we do not condone doing a la critically acclaimed last week. And in this case, though, it's the Real Rejects, so you can afford to go against the grain versus your regular strategy. But you would think, after seeing this blow up in critically acclaimed's faces, that they would not do this same strategy, and yet Top 10 did it anyway. So Aaron, you touched on it already, but yeah, the Douglas question was kind of a tricky question just because no one knows who Cameron Douglas is. So I can see why Real Rejects would get stuck on that. Top 10 took advantage by stealing, but I was impressed with question 3, the Robert Downey Jr., Michael Douglas, Tobey Maguire question, because they were able to deduce Wonder Boys, despite not seeing the movie. So they were able to eliminate other options, and they came down to it via multiple choice. So just because they didn't know the movie, it doesn't mean they were completely screwed in this case. But Brian Goodman popped up, friend of the show, player on the show. Of course, he played against his actor in Black Butterfly, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, in a previous Celebrity Schmoedown. He was in Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can. So I like how they had a nice little shout out to friend of the show, Brian Goodman, former actor on Lost as well. And we saw John Humphrey's strength in genre films when it came to Jennifer Aniston and Leprechaun. As soon as that question was asked, I knew right away, John Humphrey's got this. So in the case of question 6, I'm not sure we have seen a Josh McCougar rule used on a steal opportunity without multiple choice being involved. So in this case, Rejects did not ask for multiple choice. They just guessed the answer. And so Top 10 did not have the chance to ask for the multiple choice options. And yet they still asked for a repeat. So Christian was kind of caught off guard because we don't see scenarios like this too often where the team that can steal asks for a repeat. So a very unusual situation there, but it was the end of a 6-point round out of 12 for Real Rejects. I got to get your thoughts on the first turn of round 2.
Well, Real Rejects, I thought actors, actresses, that category would suit them fine. It deals with probably more well-known mainstream movies. In most cases, you're going to get some that are some deep cuts like,
Brian Goodman.
Or even the Leprechaun question, not necessarily mainstream per se, even though the character might be. So the round went kind of how I thought for Real Rejects, just not quite good enough, but enough to make it competitive. And so they went to multiple choice a few times, and they got 2 out of those 3, which was nice to see that they could maneuver the way through some of these questions, like you were just alluding to. This is kind of how Real Rejects has performed throughout their entire career in the Schmoedown.
Yeah, that's how they play their game, and they did keep it a little bit closer than I thought they were going to here in the round. They even acknowledged that by saying, "Oh my God, we're winning by a little bit. I'm going to screenshot the screen showing that we're winning in this round." So I thought that was pretty fun. I enjoyed the back and forth bit there. In the second round for Top 10, they spun biopics on their second spin, which is Roca and No's strong suit. They go 5 of 6 for 8 points. No steal opportunities for Real Rejects here. Frank, what'd you think?
Yeah, started off pretty hot, getting those first 3, 2 points each, and then the second half of their round, they had to go to multiple choice those last 3, even though I think that 6th question, Roca pretty much knew, but played it safe, and you could because you were going to have a nice 6-point lead if you get that 1 point. So it was a pretty safe move on their part just to get that point, just to check, just to make sure. Would I have liked to have seen them run the table in the second round? Absolutely, because they're coming off some pretty bad losses. namely to the Patriots, and they need to have great performances if they want to go far in this tournament and challenge the Patriots. They need to have their confidence where it was when they lost to the Patriots at the Spectacular last year. So I did like the second round from top 10, but I kind of do expect more from them.
Brian, what'd you think of their turn here?
Well, of all the teams to utilize BDSM, top 10 ends up utilizing BDSM. They move the ticker once to avoid repeating the same category, and they did so without trying to fulfill a wish by placing the ticker on their desired category of biopics. And while the ultimate goal of BDSM is to avoid repeating the same category, it can bestow these kind of rewards as long as you don't treat it like that aforementioned genie lamp. So this went pretty well for Rocha, all things considered. However, question 4, Makuga's favorite film, Pawn Sacrifice, they went to multiple choice. Everybody missed it. Real Rejects couldn't steal that. Go back and watch Josh Makuga's interview with Tobey Maguire as part of Pawn Sacrifice's press tour. It was a complete and utter disaster. Question 5, the Mr. Turner director. I got to disagree with Frank on this because I don't think he knew Mike Lee from a hole in the wall. So multiple choice helped him out there. And I've got a couple issues with the multiple choice options on this question. Ava DuVernay, misspelled. Michelle McLaren of Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones fame, misspelled as well. So guys, it's not a big deal, I realize, but it's important to a lot of people like me who are giant fans of Michelle McLaren. Not like one of those bandwagoners like Fredo Knapsack. But question 6, I do believe that he had an inkling that it was Clive Owen, but he still needed multiple choice. 21 to 15, top 10 at this point. End of a 9-point round out of 12. So this is a pretty solid round. You want to see teams go 10 of 12 in their desired category. 9 out of 12, yeah, you'll take it, especially against a weaker opponent. But in this case, Matt Nost provided 0 contributions in this round, 0 points. Obviously, it was Rocha's biopic. It was his favorite category, but still no contributions from Matt Nost. And that is in addition to only 5 points in round 1. So at this point, Rocha has been carrying the team.
Well, Rocha did talk over him on that first couple of ones. He did kind of jump in there. Let's give him a little bit of credit.
No.
All right, well, let's go to round 3 then, and let's talk about Greg of the Real Rejects going first. He got the 2-pointer, which is my favorite answer in Schmoedown history. Kill Hitler was the goal in Valkyrie. It's my favorite answer of all time. We go to John, who got his 3-pointer. Thomas Anderson was Neo's real name in The Matrix, which brings him to the 5-point question, the Achilles heel of Real Rejects. They've never hit one. They said it. But they do this time. John Humphrey comes through in the clutch. California was the state in Aaron Brockovich. And at this point, the Real Rejects lead the top-seeded top 10, 25 to 21.
They acted like they won the Super Bowl. They should have just walked off right there. They should have just resigned from the Schmoedown at that very moment, knowing they had a temporary lead on top 10. This is the biggest victory they'll ever have in the Schmoedown, especially when you consider Christian's post-match comments.
Well, let's jump back over to top 10, where it was Nost getting the 2-pointer. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was the movie tagline. Then we go to Rocha for the win, the clincher, the 3-pointer. Liv Tyler in That Thing You Do. He didn't draw it out. He did kind of gasp and do that thing that he does, but he did that thing that he do when he... Never mind. Never mind. Top 10 wins, 26 to 25. As we kind of expected here, Real Rejects came in to have fun, and top 10 kind of came in all business and got it done when they needed to. Frank, what are your overall thoughts here?
Overall, I thought top 10, they ended up having one of the better matches of the teams in this first round so far. So it was good to see that they're near the top of the list in terms of teams that have competed and won. So that was good to see. There's still room for improvement, and I think they know that. But look at Real Rejects. They gave a hell of a fight here in the third round, getting all 3 correct for the first time in their Schmoedown career. So it was a nice time to do that, to put some pressure on top 10, because taglines for Matt Nost, I don't think, or really anybody, is not really the easiest category in the world. Some of these taglines just sometimes don't make sense to you when you pair it with the title of a movie. And he was able to get this one and set up Roca for the win. So it was a nice 1-2 punch there at the end, as was said by Christian and Ken there at the end of the match as well. So overall, I'm glad Top 10 won because I did have them in my brackets. I mean, so far, so good with these two matches. I've gotten these two correct, so we're off to a nice start for week 2 here in round 1. So I'm looking forward to this matchup between Blofeld's Cad and Top 10.
Brian, before I get to you, I forgot to shout out the Beast during Real Rejects 5-point question, which was biopics was the category, and Bibbs yelled, "Irony!" I loved it. That was a lot of fun. Brian, what'd you think of the finale here?
Yeah, I'm sure the Beast was salivating over the Real Rejects round 3 questions as well, and top 10s as well. So a very different stroke of luck, if you will, for critically acclaimed last week. But Real Rejects got all 3. That is something that they've never done, and they'll never do it again, given Christian's post-match comments. But Matt Nost, the 2-pointer for top 10, that was his first contribution to the team. He contributed 7 out of 26 points. Roca did the rest for the win with Liv Tyler, which he knew immediately That Thing You Do has been coming up a lot of late. So competitors, make sure to rewatch That Thing You Do, as that is something that Skaliski is pulling from a lot lately. Overall, the match was more watchable than probably anyone ever expected, even Real Rejects. They put up the match of their lives, and as I keep saying, it's not going to matter since Christian is still going to break them up, which is a bit of a disappointment. Now, Christian kept saying the former champs throughout the match in regard to top 10. I think he was doing this partially to annoy me, since he's trying to hype and will them to the final now that the unanimous favorite to win, critically acclaimed, was upset. However, I really don't count top 10's title win, since they didn't have to go through the rigors that most champs go through by either winning the tournament or the requirement of winning at least 2 matches in a row before earning a title shot. The Patriots won 2 matches in a row in late 2016 before getting their shot against bottom 10 at the Schmoedown Spectacular. The Pats have now defended 4 times in 8 months. But back to 2015's team tournament at AfterBuzz, top 10 lost to JTE and Finstock in the final 4 of the 2015 tournament, which the Schmoes ended up winning post-Collider migration. Then, in September 2016, top 10 beat Rotten Tomatoes and immediately got a title match against a checked-out Schmoes team a month later, despite not winning 2 matches in a row first. Then, 2 months later, they failed to defend against the Patriots at Spectacular. So they were fast-tracked to a title, only they got off on the first exit by failing to defend their belts, much like Roca Reigns in singles. So if they end up going on to get a title shot against the Patriots at this year's Spectacular, I will consider that their first real title quest and title win if they manage to upset the Patriots.
Hot take. Well, let's talk about the post-match interview. What do you got for me, Brian?
It's time for the Emma view, where a bunch of falsehoods went down. Emma said some strange things in this Emma view. She said, most of your number one choice for who's going to take the entire team league in this tournament, I don't think that's true at all, Emma. I thought for sure that critically acclaimed was the unanimous choice to win it all. I don't think top 10 was the unanimous choice to win. They were definitely in the final for a lot of people, but to win, I don't think so. She also did a great Stewie Fife when she said to top 10, it must feel good for you guys to get another victory under your belts. And then that was followed by this quote, Matt Nost, you've been on fire lately. And to that point, I have to say that I must be watching a different game, because that is not remotely true. He got the first question of the match correct, and Christian commented how well he's playing of late, but then he missed that easy Sarah Marshall question right after that. So it's easy because you don't need to be a viewer of Forgetting Sarah Marshall to know who played the titular character. But Nost ended up securing 5 questions in round 1 since that Python question was wrong. He answered 0 questions in round 2, but he landed his 2-pointer in round 3. Again, that's 7 out of the team's 26 points. So I wouldn't qualify that as being on fire. And then Mocha went on to say, I want to kick the shit out of the Patriots. I'm driven like I've never been driven before. It's like that old school stuff. People, when they play me or when they play us, they bring their best stuff. He even said Frank could back him up on this. So that sounds like a heel, guys. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like a heel to me. It also sounds like a braggosaurus by saying, oh, people bring their best stuff against us. The stats will back that up too. So I don't know what top 10 is. They're being sold as this new and improved top 10 that are faces, and yet they're acting like heels in their post-match. So, Aaron, any thoughts at this point? I know I've gone on for a bit.
I have a challenge for top 10. And fans, you guys can get this conversation going more than I can, but if top 10 feels that they are so good that they can beat the Patriots, even though they lost to them twice, how about this? Why don't you bring something to the table? How about this? Since top 10 thinks they're just going to run through this tournament, how about if you don't win, then you're done for a year. You're done as a team for a year. No title shots. You're done for a year.
I love that. I love that. Stakes, real stakes. Unlike the MCU, there's real stakes in what you just proposed.
Put your money where your mouth is. And on top of that, if somehow, some way, I'm not saying that you can't, because it's very well that you could, you win the tournament, you go take on the Patriots, and if somehow you lose again, then you break up. Bring it to the table, guys.
Turner, I love what you're saying, because that would be 3 losses to the Patriots in title matches in the span of a calendar year. Thus, either you break up or you sit on the sidelines for a year, because there's no point in them taking away opportunities from other teams like MODOK, like Clammy Hands, like Action. There are a lot of great teams that need to get their shot. So if they lose at Spectacular, assuming they make it, let's just assume for a minute, if they lose at Spectacular to the Patriots for the 3rd time, then I agree with you. They should either break up or take a year off.
Frank, what do you think? Am I just being crazy, or do you think that there's a possibility of that happening? What do you think?
I just want to clarify. Are you talking about if they face the Patriots, or what if they don't face the Patriots? Still the same thing?
If they don't, hypothetically,
yeah,
don't win the tournament, if they are eliminated, let's say they play Team Action or something, and Team Action beats them, Blofeld's cat even. They're not a team for a year. They can't play for a year. They're done for a year. However, if they do win and they play the Patriots and they lose that match, then they're done completely.
I do like the stipulation that they'd be done for a year. I don't think you're going to ever see top 10 split up, whether they like it, whether they decide that themselves or Christian does. I don't think that's ever a possibility, to be quite honest. However, this stipulation that they sit out a year because they've gotten trounced by the Patriots 3 times, or they lose here in the tournament, I do like that kind of a stipulation. But to say that tournament, I'd rather see that stipulation for the tournament title or against the Patriots, either or. But for a regular tournament loss, I don't know if it would garner, I don't know if I would say a year, but certainly a lengthy amount of time before we see top 10 again, because you're right, there are a lot of teams out here that deserve their shot at the belt. But I would like to think that if they did lose, it may not be a year, but at least 6 months, at least half a season, I would like to think that they're going to have to sit on the sidelines and watch other teams come up the ranks. So I do like that kind of thinking that that's where it could be headed for them.
Let's not forget, if they go on to play the Patriots at Spectacular, that will be their 4th title shot in 14 months. So there have to be stakes. I don't know what those stakes are, but regardless, there have to be stakes in the event that they lose again to the Patriots, because there are way too many teams that deserve a shot at the crown, and we cannot deny them for another year because we want to keep giving top 10 opportunities that they keep failing to capitalize on.
Well, Frank, you took my point and you definitely refined it to where now I'm saying it out loud about the championship breakup. Maybe that's not the way to go. Maybe you're right about that. But, if you're going to talk all this stuff, like give it even more stakes. Like, let's bring it all to the table. So now is the chance to not only get back your title, but put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. I love what you're saying.
Well, and I think you could throw that. I mean, I don't know if it's a fair stipulation. You throw it back at the Patriots, say, "Hey, whoever loses, they break up."
Well,
I mean, but I know, but it's like, what else? What kind of stipulation would the Patriots have to? I mean, because they've beaten them.
Sit out a year.
Just sit out a year. Yeah, I mean,
well,
hold on, 6 matches is only 6 months is only 2 matches. There's a match once every 3 months for teams at this rate, so it would need to be a full year. They would have to sit out. And I think that's a fair stipulation without going nuclear and breaking them up. But 4 matches is what another team needs to truly get a shot at the title. They have to win 2, then that third match would potentially be a title match. So I think top 10 would have to be removed from the equation for a year to give other teams the opportunity that top 10 has been given 4 times in 14 months in the event they go on to play at Spectacular.
Yeah, there's really no easy way to do it without doing a year, because just the way, one team match a week leaves a limited amount of time for other teams to get involved. So yeah, I hear you saying teams generally need 4 wins, 3-4 wins to get that title shot, and that's going to take a whole year.
This is why they should not have been in the tournament, because it gives them way too many shots in a short amount of time. But we've heard all this before from Rocha. We have heard him say the exact same messages, the exact same way. Every time it's going to be different than the last. I mean, he is basically on repeat. So there have to be stakes in this case, because it just sounds like the same message and dribble that we've heard over and over again. So prove it. Put your money where your mouth is and actually put some real stakes on the line to where you don't just get another shot 6 weeks later. In singles, he keeps getting backed up whenever he loses. Ellis wins the tournament. Ellis loses to Merle. Rocha gets a shot 6 weeks later. So every time Rocha has failed, he's been backed up. Well, in this case, there needs to be no insurance. When he falls, he truly stays down.
And let's think about it from a storyline standpoint, because we know the commissioner loves storylines. Every top 10 match from now on has added stakes, because they could lose this one and they could be done. So it just makes those matches much more exciting. And if nothing else, I look forward to Christian's DM saying how crazy all this is. It's never going to happen. But I'm just saying, I got to throw it out there in the ether, because I thought about it for a long time. And I thought about, what are the Patriots getting out of this? Defending against top 10 again? Whoop-de-doo. They don't bring anything to the table. So it's like, in the sense of, like, what do the Patriots get out of it? They get to beat top 10 again, possibly? Whoop-de-doo. Like, make top 10 put something on the line. If they're so bad, make them put something on the line. That was my thinking.
I'm sure the Patriots want to start new rivalries with better teams,
exactly,
like Team Action or MODOK or Clammy Hands. They want to play new blood too. They're bored of beating the same teams. I think Rocha should break up the team anyway. Matt Knost is simply not a good Schmoedown player. That's been proven time and time again. And that's the thing, though. If they lose at Spectacular and they're sidelined, that would be the perfect excuse for him to then start a new team and no longer make a go of it with Matt, because he's carrying Matt on his back. He's been doing it for a long time. And if people want to deny that, fine. But everybody knows it's true. When you truly look under the hood, you see that Rocha is carrying Matt Knost like he did today.
Yeah, I can show you the engine, Brian. You not like what? I mean, he's played better this year than he did last year. That's what I can tell you.
Can't get any worse than last year. But 7 out of 26 today, he's a non-factor.
Well, let's talk about the other side. Let's talk about what happened with Greg and John.
Also, somebody should inform Emma that the fantasy league and the bracket competition are 2 different things. She's lumped them together by mistake several times, in fact. So it's very important that the interviewer know exactly what the distinction is, because I'm not in a fantasy league. I am in the bracket competition, though. So very important. And as far as the Real Rejects post-interview, this is what I'm going to miss from this team, since it looks like they're going to be broken up. They made a reference to Matt and John being the Evan Stone of the Schmoedown. And I loved it because it was hilarious. And it also went completely over Emma's head. She had no idea what they were talking about, and it made it that much funnier. And then after that, they jokingly said that they were hoping for Tough Beats to be brought out of retirement so that they could start a 4-person team. That was hilarious to me as well. Then they brought up the fact that there was no RB3 in sight. Then we got an announcement through Emma that the Young Bucks are apparently dead. Christian voiced it over to them. And my sources tell me that RB3 wasn't even aware that these Young Buck matches were going down this week. So it seems like the league decided, you know what, we've got too many managers. We've got too many stables that are being unused at this point. So let's do some fall cleaning, if you will. And then their last point, they want Wendy Lee to compete. Just a nice send-off and a hilarious one for Real Rejects.
Robert Butler III is a national treasure, and I'm sorry I don't know what happened with that, but I kind of liked him as a mouthpiece. I
like him as a player.
Well. Yeah, a player and a mouthpiece. I thought he was really coming into his own with some good stuff, and it's kind of a shame that won't continue. Maybe we'll see him back as a competitor soon, but
and Matt Nose barely beat Robert by the hair on his chinny chin. There was actually a little bit of controversy in that match, but Robert should be in the Schmoedown in some capacity.
Well, Frank, what do you think of this post-match interview with Greg and John?
Yeah, it's the reason why I like these guys so much. They do know a good deal of movie trivia knowledge. They just seem to get bad luck or give Wolves of Steel the category that they want because, as I think Emma had pointed out in this post-match interview, that this was the best match they've played, which is statistically not true. They answered 16 out of 26 questions. That's the exact same thing that they did against Double Toasted when they lost to them. Their best game, actually, I don't know if you remember this or would believe this, rather, that their best game was against Wolves of Steel when they answered 75% of their questions right, and Wolves of Steel only answered 56% of their questions right. It's all because of that second round that they gifted to Wolves of Steel, that Wolves of Steel is where they are now against the Patriots in the title match and what have you and all that. So this wasn't their best match, but it was
points, though.
It was, well, yeah, given the format, yeah.
Well, unfortunately, it is true what they say. Nice guys finish last, it seems.
Now, can we talk about Christian's post-match comments in the wrap-up portion? Because he said some things about top 10. He said, what I like about this new top 10, they're not braggadocious. And this is where I have to say something, because the post-match that we saw with Roca and Nose, Roca specifically, that sounded braggadocious. He wants to kick the shit out of the Patriots. He wants to do the old school stuff. Everybody brings their A game against them. Everybody plays better because there's a target on their backs. That sounds braggadocious to me. So I don't know if they're on the same page as far as what Christian wants top 10 to be right now and what top 10 wants top 10 to be. So I don't see this face stuff lasting too much longer. I think Christian knows that it's not working. I think he realizes that Roca is better suited as a heel. And I think we're going to see the return of John Roca, the heel, very, very soon.
Well, to quote the great John Cena, I think Roca thinks he's the guy, and he's just a guy. So
yeah, and there were a couple moments where Roca was doing that thing like I, and then he has to correct himself and say we. So he still has this heel mentality where it's all about him, as you just alluded to.
I am confused about what top 10 is, much like I'm confused about Roca's outlaw persona. It's all over the place for me. I really haven't figured it out. I really don't have any words to describe what I'm watching just because it's flat out confusing to me.
You can't stick a square peg in a round hole.
Well, something I'm definitely not confused about is telling you about SK+. So let's go to that right now. Hello, everyone. Your faithful host, Aaron here. Do you like what you're hearing so far on the rundown? Great. Give us a thumbs up if you're listening on YouTube. Leave a comment. Join the discussion. Listening via iTunes, please rate and review the Schmoes Know iTunes feed. It helps us out tremendously. It helps us move up and down on the charts. That way more people can listen and more people can get involved. We would really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the other shows on SK Plus. On YouTube, there is something different for you every single day. Different shows with different personalities. You can't go wrong. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at SD Rundown and email us anytime. Schmoedownrundown@gmail.com. And now back to me.
All right, it's time for the Warden of the North's favorite segment, the Ward Wing.
What, Mr. White?
This week, Brian Ward unveiled the official 2017 Ultimate Schmoedown Team Tournament poster, which showed off the Regal logo he made, as well as all the faces in the tourney, minus Dewberry, of course. However, he also threw something together in just a couple hours, as he put it. This was the poster with Makuga staring up at Mark and Clark's faces that were etched into Pennywise's red balloons. This was one of Brian's scariest posters yet, as his official logo was covered in shadows along with a dark and creepy background. Makuga's jacket and the red balloons were the only colors in the piece. For more Brian Ward masterpieces, check out brianeward.com and follow him at Brian E. Ward on Twitter.
All right, well, now we're talking about our next recap. It was the Wolves of Steel, Mark and Clark, versus the Wild Man, Josh Makuga, and question mark at the time. We weren't sure. Well, we knew, but there was many people that were not sure who this was going to be. Was it going to be Ellis? Was it going to be Dan Murrell? Was it going to be David Griffin? Who was going to show up to assist the Wild Man in trying to defeat the Wolves of Steel?
Producer Seducer?
Who knows? But dare I say, talking about the opening promos, I think Makuga kind of gave it away when he said, this person has a beard, they like to drink. So if you're playing Guess Who at home, that eliminates a few people. So it could only have been one or two. Maybe David Griffin when he has the beard, maybe not. Or Elliot Dewberry, who it ended up being, and they have formed a team called the Wildberries. Frank, your thoughts on the revelation that Elliot Dewberry is with Josh Makuga?
Once it was revealed officially that Dewberry was Makuga's partner, I found it to be a pretty funny pairing, not necessarily a pairing that would give much knowledge in a Schmoedown. Well, I guess I should say, as the match progressed, I was more on board with the pairing, because right on its face, I was like, oh, okay. But as it went on, I found it more entertaining. But entertainment, that's what it gave me. And I think if that's what they were going for, then that's exactly what I got.
I think we can agree that the Wildberries would be a world-class beer pong team. But in terms of Schmoedown knowledge, Brian, what do you think here?
Well, I'm still partial to the team name that I came up with on Twitter, and that is Josh Makuga Squared. So I've got more to say on that later. And I've got a lot more to say about the Dewberry reveal of it all, but I'll save that for the end of this recap. And I don't know why we're hiding this, but we've known this for quite a while. We've said this on the air, in fact. And so this didn't surprise us. We've had a chance to talk about it amongst ourselves for a while. And my favorite part of this whole reveal was how Christian wasn't even paying attention when the music came on for Dewberry. So just a cool thing to point out when you go back and rewatch it. But a random point, I've talked before how there's been evidence to the fact that Makuga did not watch Collider Collision. And this pre-match had another piece of evidence, as Makuga said Drew McWeeny wasn't his partner. Had he actually watched Collider Collision, he'd know that Sam and Drew were paired up months ago. So clearly, Josh Makuga did not watch Collider Collision. But as far as Elliot Dewberry's not a bad player. He's actually relatively good. I'm not saying he's elite. I'm not saying he's a great player, but clearly he was the only thing that Team ETC had going. Ricky Schroeder contributed nothing, but Elliot proved enough to show that he's capable in the Schmoedown. He's an average player at best. And in Josh's case, he just needs an average player when you look at his partner history. He's had some very bad partners. Not that they were bad individuals at the game. They were just bad with him. So in this case, he gets a guy that is acting like him. And there's a bigger point I want to make about this, but I don't mind the pairing. I just have an issue with the reveal of it all. So let's talk about the intro, though, because this is another example of why the Wolves of Steel are going to be missed once they inevitably retire. This feels like their last hurrah when you listen to their post interviews, when you listen to Clark and Mark talk about this last run of theirs. And I'm going to be disappointed that we're not going to get great entrances like this. Aaron, I know you love their entrances as well. And one more point, though, I'm disappointed they didn't give us a better photo opportunity because they rushed to their seats without posing together, something they've normally done in all of their great entrances. So I was very disappointed because I went to screenshot for our Twitter feed and I didn't have a great shot of them together. So Turner, where does this stack up in your Wolves of Steel favorite entrances?
Oh man, it's got to be right up there. I think my all-time favorite still is Jason and Jason's mother, just because Riley is incredibly creepy. But this one was also creepy on Riley's end. Clark comes out as Georgie with missing arm. How fun, man. How fun is that? We gave Riley so much crap on the show back in the day for always coming out with a Superman shirt and the leather jacket and the glasses. And man, the guy kills me. I loved it so much. And these teams, the Wolves of Steel, just have so much fun that it's infectious. You can't help but be in on it. I loved it.
Let's give credit to the deep cuts dudes as well, because Thad and Aaron added some visual effects that added to the creepiness, like some dripping condensation on the screen. So they really tied the room together, if you will. So great package all the way around.
Frank, have you ever downloaded the You'll Float 2 Trap remix? Is that on your playlist?
It's about to be. That was a pretty good intro song. I was wondering where it was at. I saw someone drop the title, so I'm definitely going to go add that to my Halloween playlist.
Let's talk about the other side. Let's talk about the Cougar come out before the Wolves of Steel. We saw Dewberry come out to the John Cena music. Well, let's talk about round one. Let's get into the match itself. The Wolves of Steel come out. Clark gets 7. Mark Riley gets 5 for a 12-point round for them. On the other side, Makuga getting 3. Dewberry with 5 for 8 points. So 12-8, Wolves of Steel after 1. Brian, what'd you think?
Yeah, Riley with 5 and Wolf with 7. So another balanced attack from the Wolves. There was a lot of overriding on both sides during this match. People riding past the time that they're allotted. We're seeing more of this lately, in fact. And so I didn't expect much from the Wildberries in this round. Frankly, this match, since they put on such a show before the match and during, thus their focus really wasn't on the trivia. So they were just trying to be showmen. And when you're focused on being showman and when you're focused on being funny, oftentimes the trivia gets lost. And so their performance was about as I expected. Quick couple points. Pronunciation guy, Josh Dumel. And Christian, on question 7, he went to round 2 too soon. This hasn't happened in a while because he finally got the help that I was begging for him to get 8 months ago. So this is one of the few slip-ups from Christian lately. So I just wanted to give him credit while pointing out that he jumped the gun a little bit. And one more point to competitors, to actual players of the Schmoedown, focus in on Gladiator. There's a lot of Gladiator questions lately, so make sure to brush up on your Gladiator knowledge.
Frank, 12-8, Wolves of Steel with a slight advantage here. Is this par for the course? We're used to seeing them like this, right?
Yeah, we are used to seeing them like this, but usually it's Mark with 7, Clark with 5 or 6, because this was the first match in the 8-question format first round in teams that Mark did not score 7 points. He scored 7 points in his 3 previous matches. This time it was Clark for the first time ever scoring 7, even though she's been flirting with it these past couple of matches. So it was kind of a flip, but they still got the same result as they normally have in the past. As for Dewberry and Makuga, pretty much what I thought. Elliot is not quite elite, but he's serviceable. Josh, he's a lifetime 50% answer guy. So we got just about what we expected from both these teams, albeit in different ways.
Well, let's talk about round 2 now. We had the Wolves of Steel up first. Spinner's choice for them. And what did they take? Horror thriller. What else would you take? They go 4 of 6 for 8 points. The Wildberries did get a 1-point steal. Fred Ward and Tremors. Brian, what'd you think of Wolves of Steel's turn here?
Yeah, they did get 8 out of 12 available points, but it was a very rough start, and they did finish strong. But based on that rough start, this match could have gone another way rather easily, and that's why I'm always concerned about people taking the horror category, just because it is so widespread. You're covering so many different subgenres, so many different decades, that we've seen people who are supposedly strong in thriller or horror completely misread that category. So in this case, the rough start did not affect them. They finished strong. And when you've got Makuga and Dewberry stealing a point, I got to be honest, I felt a little bit of worry for Wolves of Steel, but However, the Bradley Whitford question, Cabin in the Woods, Get Out, that seemed to be a turning point, in my opinion. You know, I'm always looking for turning points. And so Wolves of Steel seemed to get their legs back under them at that point. The Luke Evans and Dracula Untold. Clark has been talking about this film for as long as I've been watching her, say 4 or 5 years. So this was right in her wheelhouse. So at that point, they never looked back.
Another note about Clark. If you're going to ask Clark a question about Black Christmas, take it to the bank. She's going to get it. It's one of her favorite films. And we'll talk about that with another competitor later, but we saw it on her face when the question was asked. She knew it right away. Frank, what did you think of their turn here?
In the past, they haven't really done as well with horror thriller category from the wheel. It's different when it's just horror, but when you throw in thriller, it's really you're really answering two different kind of categories in some cases. So I was curious that they took as long as they did debating whether or not to take horror thriller, and I think maybe because in the past it hasn't really worked out well for them.
Oh, Collision. Riley at Collision. He got horror thriller at Collision, and that did not go his way at all.
Yeah, so I mean, there is precedent for them to waver on this category. So I wasn't surprised at all that they were taking as long as they did, and I was only a teeny bit surprised that they did take horror thriller. I thought they might go something a little different, that they felt more comfortable. But given both of their minds are heavily geared towards horror films, it did make sense in the end. And yeah, I'm glad they had a strong finish, because missing those first two, using multiple choice as well, did not look good. It gave me a really bad feeling, especially, like you said, Brian, when Makuga stole that one Tremors point. But they finished strong, which they needed to do, and it was enough to fend off the Wildberries.
Aaron Turner, did you know that Tremors question, Earl Bass and Tremors?
Of course, it's one of my favorite movies, and I wanted to actually add to your point. When you're done reviewing Gladiator and watching it again, watch Tremors again. It's the second Tremors question that was pulled this week. Don't forget, of course, Reba McEntire earlier in the week, and now we had Fred Ward here. So watch Tremors as well, guys. Let's talk about the Wildberries turn in round 2. They got drama, but it was okay. They went 4 of 6. They got 6 points on their end. The Wolves of Steel did add 2 1-point steals. Curtis Hanson was the director of 8 Mile, and there was a drowning in the ice storm, which I guess nobody on the planet saw but me, I guess. Brian, what'd you think of their turn here?
Well, it was a 6-point round out of 12 available points for the Wildberries, so this was not a very successful round, to say it kindly. That includes a 1-point steal that they got from that Tremors question. And like I said, there was really no chance of the Wildberries winning, given the energy that was being expended on putting on a show and being funny during the match and being outlandish. And when you're so focused on all these other things, again, the trivia becomes kind of an afterthought. And I really did not appreciate Josh Makuga taking shots at the best film of 2016. Of course, I'm talking about Denis Villeneuve's Arrival.
Frank, what did you think of their turn here?
Just about as I expected, a little bit below average. The league average is getting 8 points in your turn without including steals. They got 6, so a little bit below average there. And, you know, in a drama category, I didn't really think Josh would be too up on drama films. You know, Elliot, I think he has a very scattered array of knowledge. I think it's very scattered, but he has his hands, I think, in a little bit of everything. So I thought he would be the main force in this round, which it seems to be just from watching. I think it was probably more a 75-25 leaning Dewberry, but getting 6 points, yeah, I think that was about what I was expecting.
Guys, if the pizza guy is going to benefit from doing the top 10 show again, then clearly the Wild Man is going to benefit from doing WGN America's equivalent of FX movie download. So clearly Josh Makuga is going to have more movie knowledge from doing that show, right?
Maybe they'll get Tremors or perhaps Gladiator one day. Let's go to round 3, where, of course, the Wildberries, they are behind at this point, so they had to go first. Makuga does get the 2-pointer, the dreaded Goosebumps.
Let's talk about this, because it's that question again. It's that question again that we saw during the Late to the Party critically acclaimed match, only it was reworded. So competitors at home, watch the Schmoedown, like we saw with that Fredo knapsack scandal a few weeks ago involving Elizabeth Banks and Rita Repulsa. Questions will be reused. They'll just be reworded or inverse. So if you watch the game, your odds of winning the game go up a little bit.
While you're adding movies to your Netflix queue, go ahead and add Goosebumps as well. We'll go to the three-pointer, which Dewberry was up, and he missed. Popeye was the answer. So it comes down to this. They have to get the 5-pointer or they are TKO'd. Who was the first lady in Olympus Has Fallen? It was Lexington, Kentucky's own Ashley Judd. The Wildberries could not pull it, and the Wolves of Steel pull off a first-round TKO of the Wildberries, 22-17. Frank, your overall thoughts here?
I'm glad to see Wolves of Steel get the TKO. I did pick them to win this match. I don't care who Makuga's partner would have been besides Dan Merle or someone of that caliber. I thought it was a great match for the Wolves of Steel. I thought we got exactly what I thought we would get out of Josh and Dewberry. Everything went according to plan for once in my prediction, so I was pleased with the end.
Brian, what'd you think?
Yeah, Wolves of Steel had this in the bag from day one. And for people to pick a team where you don't know the other player, I don't know why you do that when you've got proven veterans like Wolves of Steel whom are motivated to go on one last title run. So there's never any doubt about whom was winning this match. But Christian nonetheless loved the sloppy, wild behavior of the Wildberries because he kind of has to say this after 8 months of hyping who Makuga's partner was going to be. So I get why he has to kind of endorse them. And they are a fun team. I'll give him that. Again, I've got more to say about the reveal of it all. But Turner, Elliot not only joined Josh's team, but he was molded in the image of Josh thanks to the pink jacket that Josh loaned him, the matching beard, the beer chugging, the loud and obnoxious comments throughout the match, etc. This also takes place in professional wrestling, something we saw in the old days when Jim the Anvil Neidhart put on the pink tights and joined up with Bret the Hitman Hart, as well as a more recent example of The Miz and Damien Sandow. So, Aaron, can you talk a little bit more about this phenomenon in wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically your partner conforms to the more, sometimes it's the more talented, sometimes not wrestler. In the case of The Miz and Damien Sandow, Sandow basically imitated everything that The Miz did. The storyline was that The Miz did not want to get hit. He did not want to wrestle. So he had a stunt double, quote unquote, in Damien Sandow that wrestled all of his matches for him. And essentially, when they were in a tag team, they would both imitate each other's moves, and it was a lot of fun. Damien Sandow got way over. That's a lot of fun. And in the case of Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, it was just a perfect fit at the time. Jim just went ahead and conformed to what Bret was wearing. They became one of the most successful tag teams of all time.
Yeah, it's not just talent or skill. Sometimes it is the bigger personality, as you said. So in this case, Josh is a big Schmoedown personality. He's popular. He gets ratings. People know him. So it makes sense why he would want a partner that would conform to his style and his way of doing things. Elliot has proven that he can get wild in the past with Ricky Schroeder. So I think it's a good partnership. I just have issues with the reveal, but let's talk about the Emma view, Clark Wolf, Mark Rowley, and then we'll get into the reveal of it all. So Aaron, did you have any thoughts on the vanilla post-interview for the Wolves of Steel?
It's so funny that you say that because that's what I have written down in my notes, that it was kind of vanilla, kind of bland. It's kind of exactly what we expect. Yeah, they're having one last ride. They could lose at any time and it's over. We get it. I'm on board. You guys won. They're my pick to win it all. It's fine.
And plus they said all the right things about their upcoming opponent. Late to the party. Oh yeah, they're good. They're not just fans who react. They're a good team. They know their stuff. So this was par for the course as far as vanilla post interviews go. Frank, any thoughts on Wolves of Steel's post interview?
Yeah, I thought you could really tell that they know that every match is their last match, basically.
Yeah,
and so that was quite evident in their tone. And I really do believe that Riley wants to get Clark this belt, and Clark wants to help Riley become the second player ever to hold both belts, even at different times. And then their comments about late to the party. Yeah, look, they're good. They can hang with anybody, and I'll be surprised if that match between these two teams isn't as close as it was between Critically Acclaimed. So you're right, they said all the right things, and all the right things were the true things. I just hope that Wolves of Steel can go on a long run here for one last shot at the belt.
Clark often says that she doesn't smack talk, she doesn't trash talk, so you're not going to get one of those big hype moments from her when it comes to post interviews. She's just all business, and I respect that. And in case there was any doubt for some of you at home who don't believe this is the end of Wolves of Steel, I think this post interview proves it. This is absolutely their swan song. The way they were talking, it absolutely feels like their swan song. And O'Reilly has other things he wants to do. He even said he wants to develop the game from behind the scenes. And who better to develop the game from behind the scenes than a two-time former champion? So as far as the Wildberries post-interview, of course, they were throwing out accusations that it's fixed to get the horror category. They said it was a conspiracy. They also talked about how Josh Malone Dewberry his pink jacket. Dewberry, pro tip, make sure to dry clean Josh's jacket whenever you give it back to him. He gave Ellis a hard time recently when Ellis did not give him a jacket back promptly, nor have it dry cleaned first. So this is what you'd expect from two guys who just lost, who have been drinking, and they're just trying to put on a show and prove that they are the wild and crazy guys of the Schmoedown. They're basically a more competitive Real Rejects. And when I say the Real Rejects, I just mean in that they are a funny, wild team, but they are better at the game than Real Rejects. I'm not saying they are significantly better, but they can put up more of a fight than Real Rejects has proven, even though Real Rejects of late have played their best Schmoedown against Double Toasted, against Top 10. Real Rejects have played their best, surprisingly, and yet they are still going to be split up. But there was this thorn bush full of Wildberries comments, so Makuga's got all the puns in the world when it comes to these things because he's had 8 months to think about it. Before we get to the reveal discussion, the Dewberry reveal, they did a nice little post-credit scene featuring the Losers Club from It. And as I expected, Finn Wolfhard of Stranger Things fame, he came out and kind of led the way. So it was kind of interesting for the fact that Finn Wolfhard was hanging out with the Wolves of Steel. Finn Wolfhard, Wolves of Steel. If only Finn Whitehead of Dunkirk could have been there. That joke sounded better on paper, but there it is.
There it is.
That was great.
So when it comes to the Dewberry reveal of it all, like I said, we've known for quite some time, maybe 6-7 months, that this was going down. So our reaction is very different from the typical fan out there. And so I'm trying to think from the perspective of the typical fan as far as what I'm about to say. And I get why Christian utilizes the mystery player a couple times per season, this mystery player technique or approach. Essentially, mystery players are comment bait. They're an easy way to garner engagement, especially in Facebook, where admins like us have seen countless posts and polls on this very subject the last 6-7 months. Our buddy Lucas, who wrote at least 12 of those posts on this subject, even admitted that he didn't realize the purpose behind mystery players were in fact to garner comments and engagement. However, the main issue with this particular mystery was that it lasted way too long. We knew about it, and even we got impatient. And if we've learned anything from the mystery player campaign before Schmoedown Spectacular in 2016, it's that Schmoedown fans have pie in the sky expectations, as many expected Kevin Smith to come walking through that door to play Inner Geekdom last year. Instead, we got a guy who already worked at the channel and had already retired from the standard competition. In this case, people adjusted their expectations a little bit, since this person would have to be teammates with Josh for a prolonged period of time. Thus, the begging for Kevin Smith didn't happen like it normally would had it been a one-off event like Free-for-All. However, people still had huge expectations, as Merle and Nick Scarpino were polled well above Dewberry. Cody, David Griffin were some names thrown about. Even Mark Ellis was believed to be the guy, when it was quite obvious that the Schmoes are simply not interested in playing in their own league anymore, whether it's with each other or with someone else. but Dewberry would typically come in 6th or 7th on most of these polls, and that was due largely in part to the fact that the most active Facebooker was screaming that it was Dewberry for the last several months, and he kept saying it over and over. So without that happening, who knows if Dewberry would have registered that much of a poll result. But after all this time that has passed, wouldn't you think they would start to fear disappointment given the poll results, given the fact that Dewberry kept coming up as 6th or 7th on most of these polls? I know I would fear disappointing the fans, and that's where these mysteries cannot be dragged out for this long ever again. I know they want the engagement levels to be as high as possible, but the next time they do this, people may not be as interested because they might be disappointed or let down again. So it's important that you deliver on these mystery players in the future, because Campy and Dewberry, I like watching those guys, but they did not warrant this kind of treatment. That doesn't mean I'm not going to enjoy the Wildberries. I can certainly get some laughs from them, as they're a more competitive version of the real rejects, as I've been saying. However, if you're going to build a mystery, make it count. Alicia Malone at Free For All, that's worth the buildup. Obviously, Kevin Smith or Katie Sackhoff or Sam Witwer. And if you don't have a big time person to offer up, simply reduce the amount of time you drag these things out. If you want this level of engagement to happen again, there has to be a significant reward next time.
All right, guys, we're down to our final recap of the week. It was Above the Line, Drew McWeeny and Sam Levine versus the Nerds Watch, Rachel Cushing and Ken Knapsack. We didn't know what to expect. Above the Line, new team, but two great players in the league. I like their promo, guys. I liked it a lot. Drew getting a little bit more mic time. I'm glad to see it. And then there's Sam throwing in the jokes, taking shots at Roca, basically taking shots at everybody. I loved it. Brian, what'd you think?
I got to be honest, every time I see Josh at the table calling a match alongside Christian, I wonder why Jen Sturger isn't at the table. Josh is great at sideline reporting. He's great at hosting his own show, but the Schmoedown, at least as a color commentator, Josh just doesn't work for me. And what's the harm in seeing what Jen Sturger can bring to the table, pun intended? I think it'd be cool to add a woman to the mix. We saw that with Clark at Spectacular. We know that she's got the wrestling perspective to add, and I don't see the harm in trying it out. And I was interested by the fact that Christian immediately put over the Wildberries since Josh was at the table. And again, I get why Christian is doing this. He wants to put over his new team, and there is validity in doing that. So overall, I kept thinking about Jen because she was so good on our show. And I think the actual show, the Schmoedown, would benefit from that as well. I liked how well dressed ATL was above the line. They look good together. I mentioned earlier in our recap that Schnepp and Hector have that wet bandit look to them because they are so different in their look. And the same goes for these two, given the contrast in height. So they're a natural pairing, given that opposites attract, so they say. And when it came to Rachel and Fredo, they were all business in their intro. Rachel looks more and more confident every time we see her. She's mastered her signature move at this point, the crush. Frankie J, are you interested in seeing what Jen can bring to the table?
I would love to see what Jen could do at the table. I was excited when Clark was able to call a match back in Spectacular. That was exciting to see a different perspective at the desk, being at a female perspective of things. And I think Jen, like you said before, with the wrestling background, I think she would fit right in. And, you know, she's a comedian herself. So I think, and she can go back and forth, I think, with anybody from what I've seen her do, especially given these post-match interviews. So I would be a completely welcome sight to see her at the table. As for Makuga, I think he's done better when he's been at the desk. This wasn't his best time at the desk for this match. You can have up and down days, but I certainly would love to see Jen get a crack at it.
If I had to bet money, I would say that they recorded this after Makuga's match, and so I'm guessing he was exhausted from all the work he had to do in the Wildberries match. So that's an explanation right there. But Turner, any thoughts on the Rachel Cushing of it all? Were you impressed by her increasing confidence? I mean, I don't see a flaw in her game as far as the presentation, as far as her knowledge. I mean, that's regardless if she wins or loses, but she's the total package now.
Rachel just continues to get better, and she's refined her own trademark of the crush.
Yeah.
She didn't do it right away. She waited for the crowd buildup. You want to see the crush, and then she did it. I thought that was awesome. That's an awesome wrinkle to the game. And I know we talked about this off air, but I'll throw it in here. This will never happen, so please don't get this started. But if Rachel, for some reason, ever wanted to do a heel turn, when she does the crush, hey, you want to see the crush? She doesn't do it. And she just goes and sits at the desk. So she set herself up to where if she wanted to go a different way with it, she could. It's very smart. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, she teased the audience long enough to where we said, well, is she going to do it? Is she going to do it? And she did it at the perfect time to where we were relieved that she did it because she did it so well. But expert timing on Rachel's part.
Well, let's talk about round one, shall we? Above the line coming in, Drew getting 5, Sam getting 6, an 11-point round. On the Nerds Watch side, Ken managing only 2 points, Rachel getting 4 for a total of 6. So after one, above the line with a pretty decent lead here, 11-6. Brian, your thoughts?
Drew put up 5, Sam put up 6, Rachel put up 4, Ken put up 2. Fredo Knapsack hasn't undermined Alistair's watch to the degree that many expected. However, that changed this round. He completely betrayed Rachel, stabbing her in the back and the front. And what makes matters worse is that Rachel has to play flawlessly to make up for Ollie Knapsack. The thing is, this was her worst round one to date. So above the line, they drew their line in the sand as of this round that they were here to crush.
Yeah, it was a disappointing round from Nerds Watch. They collectively, Ken and Rachel, went over on 4 different categories: the horror, thriller, comedy, animated, and drama. When that happens and someone can't pick up a point on your team, that's going to put you in a hole and in a hole really quickly, especially against above the line where they got 11 points. They were, in some cases, picking each other up on some of these questions like comic books or horror thriller. So they were filling in each other's gaps there. Nerds Watch just wasn't on the same page. And if they were, it was because they were both missing the question, which was unfortunate. From an early match, I just did not have a good feeling Nerds Watch could get out of the hole, especially the way Drew and Sam were playing. And as we'll get into the second round, we'll see exactly just how that goes.
And I know neither of us could remember the shot that Sam fired at Roca, but this shows right away why Sam and Drew are such a good fit together, because Sam brings that color to the mic before, during, and after matches that Drew is less comfortable bringing. He talks about that more during our interview, but this is a perfect example of why the commissioner paired them together. And don't panic too much on the Crusher, because when it came to that Gladiator question, again, Gladiator folks, when it came to who played Marcus Aurelius, she was the only one who grabbed Richard Harris as the answer. So even though she had her worst round one to date, she still shows why she's as dominant as anyone on most days.
Let's talk about round two now. It was the Nerds Watch up first, getting classics on their second spin. 5 of 6 for 9 points. Above the line did get a 1-point steal with the third man. So it's now 15-12. Nerds Watch takes a brief lead here. Brian, what did you think of their turn?
Well, again, we talked about this with Drew, so I won't give away the answer, but I was very shocked that Above the Line deferred to Nerds Watch. For some reason, even though most teams go with the strategy of spinning first, like the Patriots do, it's worked very well for the Patriots. They want their opponents to chase them. We're seeing a lot of teams experiment with deferring. Critically Acclaimed did it, didn't work out for them. We saw another team defer, and it worked out for them. I'm blanking on who it is at the moment, but in this case, Above the Line deferred, and in this case, it worked out because Nerds Watch landed on classics. And the interesting thing is, they first spun 70s, and I could tell Drew was licking his chops because Drew loves the 70s, and I'm sure that crossed Rachel's mind to potentially take it off the board. But if they didn't know something, you knew that Drew was going to come in for the steal. So they spun away from it, and they got classics, which Drew and Sam also know. So The wheel spin did not work out for Nerds Watch in any way, shape, or form. They still performed very well in this round. They got 9 points out of 12. So all in all, it was a good round considering it wasn't their strongest category. And still, there was still some damage done by Above the Line. They stole that third man question immediately. So you cannot give Drew McWeeny any room when it comes to classics, 70s, anything that is old school Hollywood.
I wasn't surprised that they did as well as they did with classics. I think, Ken, he says he doesn't watch a lot of movies, but at one time he had to have watched movies, and maybe perhaps they're the older kind of movies as opposed to newer movies released in this decade or this century. And so with Rachel's and Ken's knowledge, I thought they would have a fair shot at classics. They answered 5 out of 6 for 9 points, which is a nice effort. But when you're in a hole against Above the Line, it would have been preferred, obviously, to have a perfect round or at least get 10 points. But 9 was slightly enough to kind of keep them in it. But then Above the Line just had their shot getting 70s.
Frank, if you get 9 out of 12 available points in a category that is not your ultimate strength, that is a win. You'll take 9 points in a category that is your strength. Granted, it's better to have 80% in your category strength, but 9 points, nothing to scoff at.
No, it's not nothing to scoff at, but when you're down as you were in this match, I think you were hoping to get in the double digits. And I mean, I know we're talking about a difference of 1 point here, but that does make the difference here in a lot of these matches.
Relative to the category, though, I think they overachieved in their minds. And Turner,
I'm not saying like they should be ashamed of their performance in classics. I thought it was a very solid round for them. Yeah.
Turner, did you expect Nerds Watch to get 9 points or more once they spun classics?
I don't know. It's kind of a mixed thing with me because I know Rachel's very strong in Oscar movies. Let's be honest. There's not many things that she's not very strong in. So whatever they spin, I'm expecting at least, I would say probably 8 to 10, I would say.
Also, for some of the listeners that are not aware of Fredo Knapsack's background, he led kind of a sheltered youth, a censored youth. His folks did not allow him to watch a lot of the popular movies like Gremlins or Ghostbusters. He led a very sheltered youth as far as what entertainment he could consume. So in general, I don't think he was allowed to watch a lot of movies. I think they wanted him to have a balanced diet, whether it's books, whether it's playing. I don't think he was able to just consume every movie like a lot of us did as kids.
Let's now talk about Above the Line's turn. Spinner's choice for them. And what do they take? They decide on 70s, the category that we know McWeeny is very proficient in. We've seen it before. And what do? 6 of 6, getting all 12 points, not allowing Nerds Watch any opportunity to steal. At one point, Drew was cackling at the question.
What film stars James Brolin, Sam Waterston, and O.J. Simpson as 3 astronauts who are forced to take part in a fake Mars landing?
That's just how it went for them. At the end of this round, Above the Line leads 24 to 15. It's looking pretty dire for the Nerds Watch. Frank, what you think?
Well, real quick, I want to go back to the decision Above the Line made to defer. And I know we've said on this show, and I myself have said that I prefer that if you're in the lead, you should go first in the second round and build upon your lead. This decision by Above the Line gave me some pause because I look at a 5-point lead headed into this round for them, and I think, well, if Nerds Watch goes first, which they did, it's going to take them at least half the round to catch up, and that means they only have 3 questions to build any kind of lead. But then once Above the Line goes, that lead's going to quickly evaporate, and that's kind of what happened here. And so it kind of making me think that depending on how big of a lead you have going into the second round, perhaps you should defer because it could take a team 3, maybe even 4 questions to even catch up at all. So, and that's kind of a bummer as well if you're the opposing team. It takes you that long to catch up, knowing that the team across from you still has to go, and you're probably feeling like they are going to take the lead back and your lead is short-lived. I'm going to have to think about my my own personal thoughts on how this strategy works out. Maybe there's some set parameters which or a strategy which you could follow. But getting into the 70s category. I think everyone realized 70s was going to be a wrap, especially with Drew and given his history with 70s movies. And we'll even hear what he thinks of categories like the 70s when we have his interview later on. So this was a fabulous debut round 4 above the line for Sam and Drew. And it was the absolute worst case scenario for Nerds Watch.
Brian, what'd you think here?
Dario Argento.
Last one. Who directed the 1970s horror classic Suspiria?
Dario Argento.
2 points. All right.
Some of these moments in this round were my favorite Schmoedown moments to date. This was a perfect round for Above the Line, scoring 13 points, including that 1-point steal. And this was the round of Drew and Sam's Schmoedown careers. They've both had highs and lows in this league. They've both failed to reach their true potential, in my opinion, but everything came together here. I said it to Drew, but his cackling with glee is one of my favorite moments ever. When it comes to high-stake matches, when it comes to a young team like Nerds Watch, I want to put the pressure on my opponent. And so if you build a big lead, that's all the pressure in the world for a young team to buckle under, especially with someone like Ken Knapsack, who's already doubting his knowledge. He's already aware of the fact that he's a weak link. So it depends on the opponent. It's a case-by-case basis, but it's worked very well for the Patriots. You got to consider who you're playing, but I want to put the pressure on my opponent in a high-stakes match, and this is a tournament match. This is high stakes. This is high stakes, so I want to make them chase me. I want them to have to answer with the pressure of a lead hanging over their heads.
Well, all the pressure in the world was on Nerds Watch here, down 9 points, which means they have to get all of these round 3 questions to even have a shot. So it was Ken up first. He got the 2-pointer. Harrison Ford and Sabrina. We go to Rachel for the 3. She had to name 2 of the 3 amigos. She got Chevy Chase and Steve Martin. Left off Martin Short, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. She got it right. So we're down to the 5-point question. Movie taglines, which just seems to be a high-pressure category for a lot of matches lately. And it was a lot of debating. A couple JTE rules back and forth. But Ken Knapsack pulls it. One of Frank Janish's favorite films, Zodiac, was the answer. And the Nerds Watch get 10 points out of this round, all 10 of them, and take a brief lead on Above the Line, 25-24. Frank, I think this kind of supports your point here of the people going first and then them having all the pressure. They took a brief lead, so Above the Line didn't have to do too much here. What do you think?
I was really, down on Ken in this match just as he was down on himself. So I wasn't entirely convinced he could get the 2-pointer in a rom-com category. He got some sort of redemption, if you can call it that. And then Rachel got the 3-pointer. And this 5-point question that they answered correctly is one of the more purely dramatic, not contrived. It wasn't anything purposely drawn out. This was a legitimate digging for the answer. And when Christian said that it was right and that it was Zodiac, completely blew me away. It was one of those holy crap moments I had watching this match. It was a lot of fun to watch, to see them put up a fight because they are a good team. I really feel like they are a good team, despite Ken's gaps in knowledge and struggles he has had in matches, in this match particularly. So I like to see that Nerds Watch did force Above the Line to answer at least one question in the third round. But man, what a match, what a round, what a way for it to end for both teams.
Brian, what'd you think here?
Well, I know Ken has been binging David Fincher movies of late, so I'm not surprised that he pulled the Zodiac answer out of his jungle of knowledge. So really no surprise there, but this feeds a point that I said earlier about people using the Josh McCougar rule to then set up their answer. There have been more Josh McCougar rule requests where it seems like people are struggling to get the answer, only they then get the answer ultimately. So again, we saw it with Action, we saw it with some other teams, but there have been more delays where you think people are not going to get it and they ultimately get it. In this case, I knew Ken was going to get it given his Fincher binges of late, but going back to his 2-pointer, when it comes to the very few Nerds Watch matches, they really haven't had a lot of matches if you think about it, but Ken has not been exploited when it comes to the 2-pointers. That's why they are 2-pointers. They are supposed to be the easiest question of the round when you consider the way the questions are weighed in terms of point versus degree of difficulty. But I wasn't surprised that he knew Han Solo's catalog of films, in this case, Linus Babcock and Sabrina, that gave them a 7-point deficit at that point. Rachel, her 3-pointer, named 2 of the 3. This is a disturbing trend because I'm starting to see some multiple answer questions coming back. Not as extreme as they used to be, but people are having to name 2 out of potential options now. Schnepp was complaining about this as well, as he had to name 2 Prefontaine actors, Billy Crudup and Jared Leto. So I'm very disturbed by the fact that multiple answer questions are coming back, even if it's just 2. But ultimately, the Nerds Watch were undone by Fredo Knapsack's round 1. 2 points in round 1 that just buried them. That buried them before the match even got to round 2. And so when it came to Above the Line, Drew was not even aware that this was the winning question, their 2-pointer. He answered the Rocketeer director right away. He said Joe Johnson, though. But since this is a leeway league, it's okay that he didn't say Joe Johnston. That being said, in the future, I think Sam needs to make sure that his partner is aware that it is the winning point potentially, so that they can make the moment a bit more dramatic, because it's a better match to watch. It's more fun to watch when they give that final winning question a bit more oomph. I love that about Drew, though. I love that he's so unassuming. He's just answering questions. He's not even thinking about the bigger picture as Sam was. That's why they're a great team. Sam is thinking about the entertainment value. Drew's just focused on answering the questions. So I don't want to hear people say, oh, he didn't say Johnston. Again, this is a leeway league. They have given leeway 99% of the time, except for Team Clammy Hands and the Clammy Hands question. So I don't have a problem with it. Above the Line deserved to win this match. They were the superior team. They deserve a TKO. So, Turner, any more thoughts on round 3, specifically Above the Line?
Drew was cracking me up here because, like you said, he did not know it was the last question. And much like Roca in the previous match, just answered it right away. It's like, oh, it's Liv Tyler. Oh, it's Joe Johnston. I think that's pretty fun. We'll talk about it in the interview, which I won't spoil any of that, but there's some good moments in there where he talks about his process during that, which I really enjoyed. But I'm glad that Above the Line pulled this off. They're a team that I look at, and I think most of the league has, and even a lot of fans have, and said, holy crap. Now we've got these guys. Look at all the new teams that we've had. Critically acclaimed, even though they've been eliminated. DC Movie News is making a run. Poor Cinema Blend, even though they've played well in 2 losses. This team league continues to get bigger and better every single week, with better teams coming every single day. And you got to be on top of your game. Nerds Watch was a team that was knocking on the door of a title shot, and now no one's answering. So it's a tough go of it. I like Rachel. I like Ken, but this was not their day.
It's time for the Emma View, little Above the Line. Sam and Drew having fun in the Schmoedown finally. In all seriousness, Sam and Drew said they are having fun in the Schmoedown, and both have had very frustrating careers in the Schmoedown. Sam to a greater extent than Drew. Drew's had a very short Schmoedown career, but he has had some frustrating moments, despite some wins here and there. But you know that he knows he hasn't lived up to his potential. Obviously, some of that has to do with the fans anointing people on paper way too soon. But you know that he hasn't really had that game-changing match until now, and this is it. That's why both of these guys were as happy as can be. They needed each other a long time ago. They just had to wait to get to this point. Perfect pairing. I'm so thrilled about this because this is my kind of team. This is my kind of team I love. It's just a perfect pairing in every sense. Entertaining Mike Presence and Sam, all business knowledgeable guy and Drew. I'm so happy that we get to watch these guys for what could be a very long run in the Schmoedown as well as this tournament. And they were all class in their interview, but Kalinowski crashed like a gentleman, like a true face that Kalinowski is. He just said that he congratulated them on the match. He did not have anything to say as far as trash. He did not say he wanted to kick the shit out of them. He was just a true face, shook their hands. And so I'm looking forward to gentlemen playing in DC Movie News versus Above the Line in round 2.
I'm on to Kalinowski. I smell something.
Kill them with kindness? Is that the strategy?
maybe. But he keeps doing this thing where he like walks and he's like, guys, I'm not crashing.
I know.
I'm not crashing, but I'm totally crashing this interview. That's exactly what he did. And then a couple weeks ago when they were playing 6 Degrees, he's like, I'm not talking trash, but I don't mean to do that, but we're going to beat the crap out of these ladies. Like, that's exactly what you're doing, actually. But anyway, I find that funny. Like, it's a comical moment for me now. Like, I don't think he realizes he's doing it, but it's just, I don't know. He's got that award-winning smile, so I guess we'll let it go.
But Sam Levine chimed in immediately because he recognized that Kalinowski was doing it in a way that was different than Josh Mocha. So even Sam recognized that Kalinowski crashing is not the same as Josh Mocha crashing. But we got to get to the Nerds Watch because this is where the drama went down. Ken, even though he got his round 3 question, that's where you'd normally think he would be exploited, but it was actually round 1, as we've discussed. He knew that he cost the team a win with his round 1 performance of only 2 points. And at that point, it puts so much pressure on Rachel. Ken knows that he's putting too much pressure on Rachel. So instead of continually betraying the Crusher, Ollie Knapsack stepped up and gave Rachel the option to leave Alistair's watch. So it's not finalized, but he has given her the ball. He's put the ball in her court to potentially find another team because he knows he is the weak link. He knows he's a problem. Before she can even react and respond to this, Jay Washington interrupts and crashes this post interview to offer her a spot in the Misfits, something she didn't seem very happy about. I think she really valued this moment with Ken. And what could be her final post interview with Fredo Knapsack, I don't think she wanted Jay interrupting what could be the final Nerds Watch post interview. So I think there's going to be more to come out about this particular moment. And then Fredo, once it cut back to Rachel and Fredo said that he's lost his smile. He needs to go cure his grayscale. However, I disagree. Fredo hasn't lost his smile. I think Fredo's smile is brighter than it's ever been these days. So I don't know what Fredo's talking about, but Rachel is not yet ready to make a decision, whether it's the death of Alistair's watch or the Misfits. I don't think she's joining the Misfits, but we'll theorize more in a second. But Rachel's up in the air now as far as team. She did say she wants to focus on singles and inner geekdom. That way she doesn't have to rely on a teammate. She can just carry things herself, which she's capable of doing. Strangely enough, though, Christian then came out of the post interview saying that he thinks Nerds Watch will be back. So Christian's on a different page as the post interview once again. So Frank, let me ask you, what do you think is going to happen here? Do you think Rachel is going to stick with Alistair's watch, or do you think she's going to jump ship to the Misfits or potentially start her own stable?
You know, I cannot see Rachel joining the Misfits. Their personalities, they just don't go together. For what Misfits are trying to be in the league is somewhat, well, I mean, actually entirely the opposite of what Rachel is. So and also I have a problem with Jay coming in trying to scoop up Rachel right when they've just suffered a very tough loss. Ken is really down on himself. And it seems like Jay is just coming in trying to cherry pick Rachel at her most vulnerable moment. Given the Nerds Watch, this might be the end. And in regards to the Nerds Watch ending, I think, this is probably the end for Rachel and Ken as we know it. Perhaps Ken can be some sort of manager of the Nerds Watch, whoever Rachel may team up with in the future. I always think Ken's going to be in Rachel's corner no matter what. So, sure, the Nerds Watch of Ken and Rachel may end, but someone else may come in and fill that spot in the future. And I do not think it's going to be someone from the Misfits.
Yeah, I too think that the Nerds Watch is done. Alistair Knapsack is just too big of a liability. If this was a David Fincher movie trivia league, then I think he'd be all about it still. But he knows he is holding back one of the Schmoedown's brightest stars, if not the brightest star of 2017. And so I don't think she's joining the Misfits. I think when it comes to Clark and Brittany Young, perhaps Rachel, Clark, and Brittany Young have something going on. Perhaps that is the new power stable. Or maybe it's just Rachel and Clark. That could be a really great combination, especially since Wolves of Steel are on their way out as well. So with Nerds Watch coming to an end and Wolves of Steel coming to an end at the same time, Rachel and Clark would be a very potent team. Turner, do you think Rachel and Clark is perhaps one of the most dangerous teams out there? Is this something you'd be interested in?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a Ken Knapsack guy. I love the guy. When Ken is sad, I am sad. So when I heard Ken talking to Rachel and saying, we'll give you the option to leave the Nerds Watch, I'm holding you back, that hurt me a little bit. But Clark and Rachel as a team would be deadly. I don't think anybody in this, I don't think the players in the league want that. I think that would be a terrifying team. And it would be another one of those teams that you look at that's like, wow, look how far we've come in this team league to where Clark and Rachel could be top dogs, along with Above the Line, perhaps, and some other teams. It's amazing. It just speaks to the evolution of this league.
Let's not forget, Clark is the one who discovered Rachel and ran up to Harloff screaming that she needs to be in this league. Everybody likes to credit Ken Knapsack, Fredo Knapsack. He wasn't the one that discovered Rachel. He was just the first person to pair up with her. Harloff tried to pair her up with Sam Levine before Ken. So I don't know why people give credit to Ken. It was all Clark. And even Rachel in the post interview said that she wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ken. And that's just not the case. She wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Clark. Clark is the one that got her here. So it just makes sense that they pair up together. And I guarantee you, if they do pair up, they are going to bring up the fact that Clark was the first person to run up to Christian and say, get this girl in the league. So mark it 8, Walter.
Well, I think also by Rachel saying that she wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Ken, well, I mean, that's true, because who were they going to partner Rachel up with if it wasn't going to be Sam Levine and someone that was, be comfortable enough partnering up with Rachel, and that would be Ken. And so Ken, who stepped out and he teamed up with Rachel, and they had a really great run for what Ken knows, and Rachel, obviously we know what she knows now. So I think maybe that's where she's coming from, that she wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Ken, because at the time they were having a hard time figuring out who to team her up with. If Sam couldn't do it or whoever else couldn't do it, Ken stepped up and got her in the league, and we're all better for it.
If they do team up, you will hear that storyline beaten into our heads. That Clark was the one to truly discover her, and it just makes sense for them to team up. But either way, it is kind of disappointing that Alistair's watch isn't going to be in existence any longer. It is a team that a lot of people have grown attached to, but ultimately the writing is on the wall when it comes to Fredo Knapsack. He's just not a strong enough player, and it'd be a shame to see a great Schmoedown career, a potential Triple Crown winner, someone that can win singles, teams, and Inner Geekdom. It'd be a shame for her to be held back by his lack of knowledge.
All right, guys, we got the opportunity to speak with Drew McWeeny of Above the Line coming off their big win. So check this out right now. What's going on, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? We have a special guest with us today. He is one half of the newly formed Above the Line. He is also the co-host of the 80s All Over podcast. He is Mr. Drew McWeeny. Sir, welcome to the Rundown.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. I got to ask you right off top, how's it feel? You guys got a big victory here in round one, you and your partner, Sam Levine. How you feel right now?
It's good. I am excited by the fact that the team dynamic seems to be really good. You never know until you actually play as a team. And while I liked Sam, and I certainly knew that his base of knowledge was very strong, you just have no idea what it's like. And I'd never played a team match at all. So that was the most nerve-wracking thing, was just, okay, I know this works differently, and how do you do it? And I thought it clicked very quickly. And I'm very confident now that at the very least, no matter how far we go, Sam and I have a good sort of rapport, and I think as a team, we're going to be really solid.
Drew, you remarked how you appreciated the fact that Sam immediately accepted the idea of pairing up with you at Collision. Can you talk about the formation of Above the Line since Collision, including the naming of the team, and how much interaction you had with Sam beforehand? Because it seemed like you guys were a veteran team, not a rookie team.
It's funny. I met Sam briefly at the free-for-all, and that was the first time I'd met him. And then we didn't talk about being teammates. It happened on the air and on Twitter. It was, I mean, if you guys saw it play out, that was not a shtick. That was how it played out. I happened to watch the end of his match. Christian brought up the thing about him looking for a teammate and made the challenge on the air. And I just responded on Twitter, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. And boom, we were a team.
And how much communication was there after that point? I mean, how did you guys come up with the name? How much interaction was there before you actually debuted?
I would say 15 emails maybe total, and a couple of Twitter DMs back and forth. And it was his suggestion for the name of the team, which I liked a lot, because it is a strange thing that, you know, Sam playing in the league, guys like Whitwer playing in the league. It's a little weird when you see somebody step from in front of the camera into the movie trivia world, but it makes sense. You get into acting, I think, a lot of times because you're a movie fan as well. And, you know, I've written as well. And I think that Sam liked the idea that we were bringing our little expertise into this, and we have our own sort of approach to stuff. So I think the name was not just a reference to the industry side, but also how we hope to conduct ourselves as we move through the league is, no matter what, I hope we're gentlemen, and I hope we enjoy playing the game.
I believe it was the Gypsy Kings Hotel California. That was your song choice. Whose choice was that ultimately?
We were talking about various options, and we were laughing about names back at sort of stories back and forth. And he told a Coen Brothers story that I really enjoyed about, I don't know if you guys know, but when the Coens edit, they do it under a fake name. Right. And so if you watch their movies, they're billed as Roderick James, who is the editor of all their films, and it's them. And Sam was on a lot one day auditioning for something, and as he was walking across the lot, he walked past the Coens and he couldn't resist, and he just nodded to them and said, "Good afternoon, Mr. James," and then just kept walking and heard them laugh behind him. And he's like, "That was awesome. That was so good. That's what I wanted." And so we were talking about who we love, and the Coens were a clear choice. And he mentioned that song as an intro. And if you know it in the movie, it's one of the most dynamic uses of music I've ever seen. And it feels great as a walkout theme. So perfect.
Drew, there was this echo chamber within the Schmoedown about how you were all business on the mic and that you needed a partner that was known for talking. However, as someone who's followed your career for a long time, I know that you're a capable mic man. So what was your reaction to this echo chamber thought?
I like the idea of somebody who is more engaged as a hype man, because I have been told, especially by my girlfriend after watching some of the pre-interviews, that I am not a shit talker. That whatever my strengths are, that is not it.
I've seen you dish it. I have seen you dish it on the air before. Not necessarily in the Schmoedown, but in general.
Yeah, I think I can bring it if I have to. But I just like the idea of somebody who really enjoys that side of it. And I know from having talked with Christian before I even joined the singles league, it was very clear that there's a theatricality that Christian loves. And I really appreciate and embrace the idea that this is not just you sit down and you play movie trivia, that there's a larger thing that he is building and a larger thing that's being played out. And I like that. I like that side of it. I think bringing Sam in, he and I are going to bounce off of each other, and I think we'll spur each other to new heights of shit talking, perhaps.
Well, I got to ask you this. You were talking earlier about seeing people in the Schmoedown that just kind of catch you out of nowhere. Like, you see people now like a William Bibbiani, like Jeff Snyder, who you work with. Like, are any of these guys, do you see them and you're like, what are your feelings going up into battle against them possibly?
Snyder and I have the most complicated history of anybody in this league. I've known him. Actually, he's not the person I've known the longest. I've known Draco and Rob Burnett longer. I've known Rob Burnett since 1991, I think.
Oh, wow.
So like there are people who I definitely have a longer relationship with, but Snyder, I gave him his first job in the business. Like, he started at AICN with us, and we have constantly been in touch over the years. After my first match where I lost to him, he actually brought me on board the tracking board where now I'm writing reviews for them a couple of times a week. And so he is technically now my editor as we enter the team tournament and the individual tournament. So I'm hoping I get to go up against him several times. And I think that's a lot of fun. The idea that, I'm not going to Toronto this year because I'm kind of out of commission, but we were about to go to Toronto and we were going to end up rooming together. And it cracked me up that we were going to be in the middle of these tournaments and mainlining movies and talking about them at the same time. It's just, there's a weird commingling that's happening. And seeing guys like Bibiani sit down and play, that's the fun of it is, you all write about the same thing. You all have, I think, I would hope that people who write about this have a love of the subject and have a wealth of knowledge that they're drawing on to begin with. But it's fun to just see what that knowledge is and how ready your access is to it, which is like a guy like Schnepp. I know John Schnepp's brain is gigantic and he will forget more things than most people will ever know. But can you pull it up on stage? Can you do it at the moment that you're asked it? That's really the trick.
Well, you yourself, I mean, you are one of the more elite players in the league. Is there anybody you see on the roster where even you are like, uh-oh?
Well, I got big holes in my knowledge, and I won't tell you what they are, but there are some definite things that as I've been playing, I've noticed. And I will say that Sam and I as a team addresses one of the big blind spots I have, because there is a chunk of time between us in age. And I think that's important. I think the movies you grow up with at a certain age, you imprint on a certain way. And so if there are films like The Sandlot or Rookie of the Year or kids movies from the 90s, I'm probably not your guy. I'm probably not the guy who saw those and imprinted on them in the same way. And it's just the way you watch films as a kid. So I think that's great, the age thing. I also think there's stuff that Sam loves about the business that isn't my forte. And I think that's a real key is you've got to know what your weaknesses are. And so anybody who you go up against, they might have that pocket of knowledge you don't. They might have that in the hip pocket. And if that's the case, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't make the wheel spin a different way. You can't whatever. There's a little bit of luck, and then you just hope that you can play to your strengths as you go through.
I like to jump to the match a little bit because in round one, I just want you to know that I also thought Jessica Alba was the lead in Cellular, so you weren't alone in that case. But
yeah, and I like how outraged Sam was about that. No.
But after round one, you guys scored 11 points with 6 points from Sam and 5 points from you. Were you feeling confident at this point, given the balanced attack? Did you guys know that you had it in the bag at this point?
No, but it felt like the most important thing coming out of that round was, oh, good, there's some communication happening here. And I think that's the biggest question I had before the match started was, how are we going to do this on the air? How natural is that going to be? Because it's not like we have this long friendship to draw on. You're learning it as you go, basically. And right away, I think there's a real immediate rapport we have. And I do think that moving forward, that'll be something we can build on.
Can you talk about the strategy to defer the initial wheel spin to Nerds Watch? Because typically players like to force their opponents to chase them or chase their lead. So you guys chose to let Nerds Watch go first. What was the thinking there?
I'd always like to see what the other team's going to do first. Then you know how hard to press the gas down. I think that there's a sense of you let the other team go and they're going to do what they're going to do. You're not going to change that whether you go first or second. But what you can do is you can watch how they're playing and then respond to that. So I think there's a distinct advantage to letting somebody else play their game first and watch what they're doing.
Well, Nerds Watch spun 70s and then classics, both of which are strengths of yours. However, you took 70s after landing Spinner's Choice. So you got a break in the fact that Nerds Watch didn't take 70s off the board already, but you've proven your 70s prowess before. Were you jumping out of your seat at this point when you got Spinner's Choice and, of course, 70s?
Well, I love the 70s. Obviously, hosting 80s all over, I feel real confident about 80s films right now. I am positively a swim in it. That's what the 80s stuff would be for me right now, because it's that we're that engaged with it. I'm making lists for the years that are coming up, and it's crazy. With the 70s stuff, that's what I grew up on. That's my bread and butter. Yeah, I hoped I would get that category, and it's a case where I love seeing that it makes other people freak out when they get it. I love that there's a category that people are terrified of that I want to land on. I'm good with that.
And what was your conversation with Sam at this point? Did you just reassure him that you've got this? Because it didn't seem like 70s would have been his first choice.
Strangely, I would say that Sam's knowledge of Sam's like a 53-year-old dude inside the Sam Levine body. And that was true on Freaks and Geeks. If you go back and look at that character he played, you get the feeling he was the only kid in that middle school that would do like Gabe Kaplan impressions. Just like he was never going to be the kid that was in tune with his own pop culture. It was the older pop culture. And I think that's true of music. I think that's true of movies. He gravitates towards 70s and 80s and 60s stuff just kind of naturally. So I think he was happy that was a combined strength of ours and happy to lean into it, because you want somebody on your team to be comfortable when you land on something you're excited about.
Drew, one of my favorite moments of the Schmoedown to date was your cackling over the ease of these 70s questions, including Capricorn 1 and Dario Argento. When you have a fun and perfect Schmoedown round like this, does it make up for the lowlights that come with the territory?
Oh, God, yeah. Nobody likes that feeling when, like, you're sitting out there and somebody asks you something as obvious as the name of the monkey in Aladdin, and you just don't know it. So, yeah, there are moments where you feel like, I must be the dumbest competitor up here. And then there's moments where you turn around and you have a run like that, and you're like, oh, no. Okay, this is what I do well. And it's just about how readily you have something. Look, the 70s stuff was so alive to me when I was growing up and watching it. But I don't study this. It's just in there. And I think that, I've seen that people are studying and reading. I wouldn't even know where to begin to study this stuff. I've been doing it my whole life. And so the things I know, I'll know. The things I don't, I honestly won't. And I just hope I get a better draw on the stuff I do.
Aaron, Frank, I just want you guys to know that I will be quoting Dario Argento until the end of time. For as long as the show exists, I will be quoting that.
Yeah, that one got me also, because I mean, for your first, like it was mentioned earlier, the first time you took 70s and you're such ease at it, and then this one, to leave somebody cackling, that's pretty daggone funny.
After this match, the one thing Sam said to me, and he pulled me aside and he said, so here's the thing, you not knowing that the match was over, adorable, but next time, let's actually try to keep track of where we are so there's a little drama, because you threw the ending of that thing away, and I don't think you realized that it happened. So,
right.
That happens sometimes in gameplay. Is I'll just be, like you said, cackling and enjoying the fact that, oh, okay, we're having fun. This is a good run of stuff, something, and then I realize where we are in the game. So Sam has ordered me now to pay attention to where we actually are.
Well, you don't want to lose the answer. You don't want, if you have it, I mean, you might as well say it. You don't want to sit there and like, all right, well, let me build this drama. And then you say it and it's like, oh crap, that's the wrong answer. So you might as well just fire it out while you got it. I understand that it's a show and we want to keep the drama part of it, but man, it would be awful if that recall just came back to bite you and you're like, oh, it's not Joe Johnson. Right. Oh crap.
Can you set the record straight? Because there was a streak there where you were coming out during your entrances a bit too early. Did someone drop the ball as far as your cue? What was the reasoning for your streak of coming out a bit too early in the entrance portion of the show?
I was just ready to go. I was back there, and I hear the music begin, and I'm like, boom, I'm out. Here we go. And they were like, you know that you can take a moment and stroll out, and there's no rush. We're not going to start the show before you find your seat. So, yeah, I think that's part of that. There's a difference between being comfortable standing in front of people and talking about something and being comfortable with the sort of show side of this. And I think, again, part of the joy of having Sam standing there is we'll lean into that more. And I think we'll start to enjoy that part of it more. I see people really take advantage, and there's like a 12-minute entrance, and I doubt we'll ever do that. But, I would like to have a little bit of fun with this stuff.
Now, you touched on it a bit already, but comparing singles to teams, which do you enjoy more? Do you like having to do all the heavy lifting yourself? Is it nice to have someone to lean on ultimately, such as Sam, since he fills in some of those gaps?
I'm enjoying the team side of it so far. And the singles, look, I'm looking forward to that tournament as well. And I think the exciting thing is my first round, I'm up against JTE, and I have yet to play anybody who has a rule named after them. So I'm very excited. I like this side of it. I'm having fun with it. And that's what I was really hoping for, was that at some point the competition would become second nature and familiar, and I would get comfortable doing that. And then the fun side of it could really become the thing that I started paying attention to.
Had you done any movie trivia before this?
No, not really. I don't even do like the pub trivia stuff. I just always assumed that if it was movie based, I would be going up against people who would be as OCD as I was. And if it's broader based, that's not me, man. I am a very focused nerd. So,
well, Drew had kind of touched on some of the questions I was going to ask about in terms of genres of films that you don't quite know as well. You've already answered saying that, well, if you don't know them, you don't know them. But what I would like to know is, now that you're in a tournament style setting in the team division, what's the vibe like in that studio compared to a regular match?
I feel like it's been more collegial. It's been more, I think everybody's having a good time. I think people really enjoy the big theatrical nature of the team tournaments. And it's been a lot of fun watching people before and after matches and walking in at the end of other matches and kind of getting a glimpse at how this thing is going to start to shake out. It's exciting, and it's been fun to watch the upsets. My favorite thing is when you're in a studio right after somebody who nobody predicted would won, and you're watching everybody kind of come to terms with it. I think that's terrifically fun. And I think the tournament will continue to have moments like that. And, for people that are watching it and really invested, I'm excited because I think you guys are going to get something other than what you thought you were going to get at the beginning. And that's going to be really thrilling as it builds.
You're facing DC movie news coming up, including Mike Kalinowski, a player you disposed of previously. Any thoughts or smack talk you'd like to share before heading into this match on September 6th?
I'll say this. I respect Kalinowski. I respect the fact that DC Movie News has done very well as a team. I think that they have their lane. And if you can shake them out of their lane at all, you can shake them as a team. That's going to be up to the wheel. That's not us. And I'm going to be rooting for that wheel and rooting against Mike because I think there are certain places where if it lands, he'll be in trouble. What he knows, though, he's a beast and very, very precise about his gameplay. So there's no slacking here. Sam and I are going to have to be really, really focused and ready, and we'll have to treat them very seriously. There's nothing about it that's that I would call easy.
Well, Drew, as we wind down here, once again, we appreciate your time and being on. We know you're a busy guy. You got a lot of stuff to do, but where can you be found? Where can people find more of your work? 80sallover.com is my current home base. It's where my magazine Pulp and Popcorn is published. It's where 80s All Over, the podcast that I co-host with Scott Weinberg, based. And I am also self-publishing books. I just put one out about horror films and how you introduce them to young audiences and sort of the responsibility that you have to get that right, called I Hate You, Old Man, Film Nerd 2.0 versus Friday the 13th. And that is based on an experience I just had with my kids where they decided they wanted to watch horror films and I traumatized them. All of that stuff you can find through the site. I'm also at the tracking board working for the Insnider, all part of his insidious plan to take the world over. We appreciate your time once again. Drew McWeeny, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Drew. I've been a fan since the Ain't It Cool days. I actually proposed a team name for you and Sam called Ain't It Cool Geek ?
It has been a while since that, and I appreciate you reading this entire time, man.
Yeah, so this was an honor and privilege, and I truly appreciate it.
Okay, my pleasure. And hopefully, if things progress, we can talk again, and Sam and I can do something together. So,
sounds great.
Perfect, guys.
We have a feeling good things are in the works for you.
Fingers crossed. All right, we'll talk soon, man.
Thanks a lot.
All right, guys, we're getting towards the end of the show here, but we did want to update our team tournament brackets. Frank, give me an update. What do you got going on?
Oh, I wish we didn't have to do this update because my bracket is horrible. I got 3 of the 8 matches correct in the first round. The first week I got all 4 wrong. This week started off pretty good, got the first 3, and then I did not get the Nerds Watch Above the Line match correct, so I ended up 3 of 8. But heading into round 2 matchups, I did correctly get top 10 versus Blofeld's Cat, and I picked top 10 to win that one. Moving down to the Trek action match, I did not pick any of those teams to win, but now that these teams are playing, I'm going to pick action. And now moving towards the other side, the top right of the bracket, the Wolves of Steel late to the party. Did not pick late to the party, but despite that, they're playing Wolves of Steel. And I'm going to take Wolves of Steel in the win. And then at the bottom of the bracket here on the right, Above the Line versus DC Movie News. I had Nerds Watch 6 Degrees. That's not happening. I had Nerds Watch winning that one. But now it's Above the Line over DC Movie News. And yeah, I'm going to pick Above the Line to win.
Everybody tried to jump the gun and say that our brackets were busted. However, clearly they meant Aaron and Frank's brackets because I'm sitting pretty at 6-2 with one section of the bracket miscalculated and 3 of my final 4 intact. Admittedly, I got upset heavy with deep cuts and Sima blends, so Mance and Team Action made me pay the hard way. However, when it comes to Team Action versus Team Trek, I gotta ride the team that won the week last week, and that's Team Action. I knew better than to listen to the echo chamber when it came to Action's wheel prowess, and after talking with Ben Bateman Media at length last week, there's clearly a lot more in their jacket pockets than guns, knives, Zippos, and dynamite. And Mance, as good as he can be, he won't be able to repeat the level of focus and dominance that Tom Cruise enabled last week. So I'm going to go as far as saying that Team Action will knock Trek out in a bloodbath. And to reiterate my previous picks in the other round 2 matches, I've got Blofeld topping top 10. However, I don't feel good about it because Harloff is clearly rooting for bottom 10. And when Harloff is rooting for something, it worries me even though I have no reason to worry. I've got the Wolves crashing late to the party's party and stealing all their beer. As I've said before, Robert and Vanessa have had a charmed Schmoedown existence thus far, so there has to be a category that goes against them during this match. I think that's going to happen. And clearly, the team that won this week, Above the Line, a team that is my kind of team in every way, they're going to whack DC Movie News. Kalinowski, Gertler, LaQuasto, and Stryer will all be mutes once the Godfather and the Geek are done with them. Drew and Sam are 2 genuine intellectuals. They do their job and just shrug their shoulders when they're done.
Well, on my side, I also went 6-2. And of course, the Cinema Blend loss really hurt me because I had them in the final. That's, off the table. But I did have top 10 facing Blofeld's Cat. I'm taking top 10 there still. Jump down to where, of course, I had Cinema Blend versus Action. That is now Trek. I will stick with Team Action here. I think that Andrew and Ben are a team that could catch fire and could make a real run here. I'm very interested to see what they do, so I got them with the win. I did have the Wolves of Steel. I did not have Late to the Party. I had Critically Acclaimed. I don't see that changing. I will take the Wolves of Steel to beat Late to the Party. The party is over at this point. And then the next one, I had both Above the Line and DC Movie News. And I had Above the Line beating DC, and that's not going to change either. Either way, I think we're getting towards the semis here, and it's going to be pretty interesting from here on out. It's going to be a loaded week of Schmoedown action. We're going to have, for the next 10 business days, if you will, there's going to be 10 Schmoedowns. So we're going to have a lot to talk about, guys.
And as you can hear, I'm already exhausted from the last 2 weeks. We're running on fumes. So, folks, we appreciate your patience and support during our busy season.
Well, that's going to do it for another jam-packed episode of the Schmoedown Rundown. Before we go, Frank Janisch, man, where can he be found? And I hear you have something new going on. Tell me about it.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at FrankieJ29. And there's a new Twitter handle out there for the Schmoedown Rundown that is geared solely towards stats. That Twitter handle is SD Rundown Stats. So go ahead and follow that. You're going to get a bunch of stats from matches, especially as tournament season is in full swing. A lot of good nuggets of information there. And I think it's more reasonable to put them on a Twitter feed as opposed to the Facebook group page, which is great and all, but there's a lot of posts. Things can get squashed fairly quickly. So if you're looking for stats on your favorite competitors and teams and matches, head over to SD Rundown Stats on Twitter, and I hope you can find what you're looking for over there.
You'll definitely find my prediction record, as you'll be tracking that closely every week since it's so staggering.
Well, all right then.
Interesting tidbit, though. If you're a competitor, maybe you also would like to check out at SD Rundown Stats to maybe get some stats on your competitors. Also, Brian Davids, where can you be found, man?
Well, if people want scoops like the It Scoop before anybody else, definitely follow the show at SD Rundown because we're scooping stuff. We've got sources inside Collider Studio, folks. So you never know what we're going to tweet out because we've got sources, folks. But you can follow more of me, Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at filmschlubspodcast.com or wherever podcasts are found. And make sure to hashtag Jen at the table.
You can follow me on Twitter at ATTitanium, where you can find me with pictures of my dogs. And it's football season now, so I would be remiss if I didn't sign off with a good nod to the alma mater. Go Herd. We'll see you next week.